Looks like we're live. What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's having a good week. Welcome to DIY Distilling 101. That's a DIY shine and steel building. Distilling 101 Q&A. So hopefully we have some good questions. Past Saturday, a lot of new people, some new questions, a lot of good info. Hopefully we get a lot more. I did fail to share the new stream. I guess I didn't refresh um, the stream and I ended up sending last Tuesday's stream out. So I went ahead and just deleted it. I'm not going to send the same stream out twice. So that's why all that happened. Just old man doing old man things, I guess. Forgetful. Clint is back. What's up, brother? You not working tonight? Good to see you back, bro. We missed you. Well, let me send you a link in case something goes down. Man, I tell you what, I can't. My contacts, I can't hardly see well in them. They're all foggy and dirty. Let me send a link this, or Cliff Clinterus, this link. All right, let's see here. All right, there you go, Clint. What's going on, James? How's it going, brother? Oh, Albert. What's up, someone? O'Sheen? What's going on, Steven? I told you I can't see with these damn contacts. I was just warning that said James. Yeah, I'm gonna have to clean them. Everything's just all blurry. I can't hardly read the screen. I don't have to read a whole lot, I guess. Sit here and chat, but what's going on, Cave Daddy? Hope everybody's having a good week. I don't know if Clint was on there last night. We're not going to have it this Saturday, so everybody make plans to spend time with friends and family. Go out and cook out and spend some time on the 250th, anniversary of our country. So should be a good time for people this weekend to get out and enjoy some fireworks, family, friends, do something. Because I am making plans. All right, let me share these links. Hopefully, I get them done properly this time, and we have the live link instead of the last week's. I don't know how making old man mistakes. Crazy. But we'll get them shared real quickly. Get back in here, and hopefully we get a lot more participation. We had quite a bit last week, Clint. They kept me on my toes, man. I was having to keep up and go. It was a challenge. I did all right, though. I did miss you. Definitely missed you, brother. Let me get these links out. Shouldn't take long. I did do some research. So I did find out that I need to take my time, and that the faster, sometimes when I get to do more than other times, it's the speed at which I'm putting them out. So if I go through this list real quick, and the faster I do it, the fewer I can put out. That's why it's always been inconsistent. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit in between each of them and see if that's the case. And Go a little slower this time. And we'll see if that matters. But I do know that if I get verified and start paying a monthly fee, I think I'll be able to do a little bit more. So I may end up having to do that. I think like $4.99 a month. That ain't too bad. $60 a year. It's cheaper than Prime. But we'll see. We will see. I'm going slowly, so we'll see if that gets me a few more or not. I'm skeptical, but I'm always skeptical. So we'll go slowly. Let's see if it helps. Did spend a little time looking through the groups, looking at some different things, and seems like anytime anybody sees some sort of infection on a mash, they always say lactose. So a lot of times, what they're calling a lacto infection is a lot of times it's a calm yeast. It's a wild yeast that's growing. Again, nothing bad. It does consume alcohol, but a lot of misdiagnosis is going on sometimes. So I'm coming back here and going to say, hey, let's see. And go back and continue with them here in just a second. Got a question about a setup idea, like to put a column with a shut off so I can do reflux for clears and pot still style for grains. Is that something? Yeah, that's actually what I've done in the past. I've basically come up and run into a T, O'Sheen. So you can have just a short spool. It's not a column, it's just a spool, right? So it's just a stainless steel tube called a spool. Go up, run into a T, put a valve on each side. On one side, you can run a column on up, and on the other side, you can just run it straight into a condenser and strip. So you can run a column on one side, strip on the other, and just open up the valves, or an infuser on one side and a stripper on the other side. And yeah, I've done that many times, and yeah, that works out well if that's what you're talking about. Yeah, it's one of my setups. Instead of doing a bypass to do the same thing, but you have to have two condensers, and which is why I bought two of those column setups so I could have a couple different condensers. But yeah, that works out well. Yeah, everybody get out and celebrate the 250. You know, make it a day to remember. It's going to be a historic day. It's 250th birthday of the greatest nation ever. Yeah, maybe AI could do it for me. Yeah. All right, let me go try to share a few more and see what goes on. I was trying to put a little break in between it and see if that helps a little bit. We shall see. I'm going a little slower. Trying to go slow. Hate being slow, but I did look and see, and there's one link I was posting to one group that they weren't allowing my posts, so I won't be posting to that group anymore. I wish the admin in that group would have told me. I would have not posted, but it looks like most all the posts in that group are from the admin only, so maybe they want to post exclusively or something, which is fine. But if that's happening, just drop me a note and I'll not bother you anymore. But yeah, it doesn't look like there's a lot of participation from other people in the group. Oh no, it didn't work at all. Fewer than usual. Okay. All right. Well, so much for that. Did not work. Actually, fewer than I could when I go fast. So, damn. That's not good. All right. It's 8:11. Remind me of the 9:11 to try it again. Yeah, it would be nice. It'd be nice if they just made like sometime in the past I've shared stuff before, but it's just sharing stuff on my page and stuff. And so when I go to share it, it gives me like check boxes so I can share it to every how many groups I want to all at once. I would love to have that for this, but I don't get that option. Uh, oh, that's for Clint. Okay. Well, my opinion is there's a lot of places that use sugar. A lot of commercial distilleries will use sugar. Small craft distillers, not big ones, but um, moonshine is untaxed, so it's not real shine if you pay tax on it. That's the distinguishing thing. Sugar's not the distinguishing factor, but once it's legal, it's technically not moonshine anymore, and you're a distiller instead of a moonshiner. So I don't know all these monikers and names. That's always been the case. If you're doing it and not paying tax, it's moonshine. If you're paying tax, it's a distillate. Yes, yeah, you can definitely use your bubble plates and use the worm as your condenser for sure. Absolutely, brother. Sure can. Yeah, put your column coming up, and you can use shotgun, Liebig, worm, whatever condenser you prefer. Absolutely. As done, Jane. Absolutely. Yeah, let me get me a little shut up here. I can't believe I didn't get to share more. I thought that was going to help for sure. It did not. Yes, I haven't got my new chair put together. I came in today, so I'll be putting that together tomorrow. Came in this afternoon. I didn't want to try to tackle that before the show, so. Damn, I got a big mouth. Did you see my mouth at the bottom of that chart? They just take up less room. You don't have the flake stand. You got no risk of running over. You can run more cooling water through it, which gives you a little bit more cooling potential. What's going on, Jeff? Good to see you, brother. I ain't talked to you in a while. And I hadn't forgot about you either. So I know I got you covered, brother. But good to see you. Going to be a Maggie this year, Jeff? But yeah, it's they're closed, so it's like a canister filter, tube and shell Liebigs. You can you can force more water through them because it's not like in an open top. So you can effectively get more coolant over the tubes, and it's very similar to to a worm, but it's a more rapid condensation, and some people feel that a slower condensation tends to be better. There's arguments for both. Um, Biggest issue with the worm, from in my opinion, is I've got a little bottle brush that I can get all the way through. I got a big long condenser, it's like 2 foot, and I got about a foot and a half bottle brush. I can go in each hole on the shotgun on one side, flip it over, and go back on each side and cover, more than half. Um, and clean it pretty easily. That's going to be tough in the worm. I did talk about in the past using a big bottle brush and running blowing, using compressed air to blow a string all the way through your worm, and a lot of these bottle brushes will have a little loop on one end where the wire comes out, and on the other end, I guess you could take some of the brush bristles off and make a little loop there and tie the string and go all the way through. Just keep pulling it through your worm over and over and over again to kind of brush it out. That's about the only way I can think of, other than just filling it full of vinegar and just putting a cork in one end, filling it full of vinegar, and letting it sit to keep it clean. Worms tough to keep clean. Hell yeah! Happy birthday, America! It's gonna be a good time. Seem to get an infection if I let the mash sit too long? Absolutely. To clarify, I always use star sand and everything. It's just natural. There's lots of wild yeast in the air, and that calm yeast it's a wild yeast. It's in the air. It's just a fungus. It's everywhere. And even if you cook everything, get temperatures up on everything, it's still, if you let it sit, beyond, once it clears, it's best to try to run it and get it right when it clears. But if you let it sit, it has a great potential of having a lactic acid or a calm yeast buildup, one or the other. Both are not a big deal. You just skim it off and go. Some people prefer, the lacto infection, and it's fine if it happens late. You just don't want the lacto infection to happen early because it can compete with the yeast for the sugars, and it can consume alcohol, as does the calm yeast. Actually consumes alcohol. So it can have an impact on your production if you let it sit long enough. But it's just a nuisance, really. But yeah, it's really hard to get rid of. That's why a lot of people think it's a great thing, but most distilleries, no, it's not good for them. They hate it because it's a pain, it's a headache. So they keep pretty things pretty clean, and sterile to try to keep and avoid that. They when they cook their grains, they get the temperature up. It's one of the benefits too of using amylase, because a lot of the times we have the grains at 135 to 55 degrees, in that range, and really you need to get over 160 plus to kill a lot of things that can infect. But lactic acid is just a natural part of fermentation. Lactobacillus is going to happen, a lot of times. But if you can keep those temperatures up and the acidity down, it will keep them at bay. But the longer you let them sit past clearing time, the larger the chances are that you're going to get some wild yeast or some calm yeast or some lactic acid formulation over time. And you just have to keep an eye on it. But yeah, star sand's not a cleaner; it's a disinfectant. So sometimes just a good old scrubbing in hot water, boiling water, will kill all that. So sometimes you just have to clean your fermenters out with some good old boiling water, and then follow up with some star sand. Star sand's basically just an acidic disinfectant. It's not a cleaner per se. So yeah, heat everything up, and once you get it past 160, 80 degrees, it's going to kill any comm yeast or any lacto, And also, the acidity of the star sand should take care of it. A lot of times, though, you got to look at certain things. Don't wood paddles. Try to avoid those because it can get in the pores of the wood, and just any little thing like that can cause the reinfection. So that's one good thing about using, high density HDPE, high density polyethylene barrels and stuff is the ability to get them clean and sanitary, and you can use acids on them, and they're pretty inert to everything. So you can, keep them pretty clean. But yeah, boiling water and scrubbing them out every once in a while, and the star sand, definitely follow up with the star sand. What's going on, Patty? Good to see you, brother. Guess what happens when you use silicone to assist with sealing up your drain element ferrules? Do not let it cure completely. Oh yeah, it's yeah, you gotta let that stuff seal for sure, and it takes a while to cure. But I guess you use the bulkhead fitting, yeah, just a thin film of it to help, seal up any little cracks and tighten that shit as tight as you can get it, and then let it cure for sure. Absolutely. Jacelyn, um, making an agave syrup, you got to get the blue agave syrup, and best to use the blue yeast that goes, that you can get as well for the tequila. But I don't know if I would go the traditional methods of putting, like a turkey or a chicken or stuff in there. But yeah, using the agave syrup, and we've got some good, turkey or turkey tequila recipes out there, but using the hydrometer and using the agave, the blue agave syrup is the key. Good clean water, the agave, and definitely recommend using the oyster shells with that, to make sure that you don't get any, you know, acid, pH crashing into the, heavy acid realm where it's going to affect your yeast. But warmer temperatures with that blue yeast, with the tequila yeast, they kind of prefers warmer temperatures. So hot times like this is a great time to do it. So yeah, but let's see if I can. I think our group has some. Let me check the. I'm pretty sure that there is a. Let me check in here and see before. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see if this. We have a. We have a Stampede Steel recipe book, and I'm gonna open this up here and real quickly and see if they got it. If there is a tequila recipe in it. And I don't say why. This must be the Spanish version. It's saying pagina. So I guess that means page. Control F. Let's see if. I don't see anything under tequila. So let me look in my. I'm going to try to find exactly how much blue syrup and water. I've got a ton of recipes. I may have to check my other PC. I got more stuff on. Yeah. me open up a couple of these and see what they say here. Actually, this one looks like a pretty extensive one. Distilling the Spirit of Mexico. Illustrations, okay. Goes quite extensive. I'm going to go ahead and let's see, is this a, let me make sure that when this was published. My contacts aren't allowing me to see well. 2014, it's pretty recent. Well, I'm not sure if it actually has a recipe or just talks all about the history and shows a lot about it. Let me scroll through it real quickly here and talking about the struggles. And I'm assuming that might have to do with some pH crashing. But it definitely helps to have the oyster shells in there to avoid the pH crashing. But it's a pretty simple fermentation. It's just the syrup and the water, a nutrient, and the oyster shells, and of course the proper yeast is very important to using that good blue yeast. Yes, that goes. Yeah, I'm not seeing a true recipe in there. Let me find another one for you. I got several here. Dang on it. Okay, here, let's see. Let's see, okay. A gallon of the blue agave to 4 gallons of water. Nutrient, the blue yeast. Heat water to 120, add your agave, let it cool, take your hydrometer reading, should be 1075, 1080. So you can basically figure out, like I was saying earlier, just use your hydrometer. That really, that's one of the best ways to make your own recipe, is to use the hydrometer. So they can say use X amount of fruit, but once you get your fruit mashed and you've added it to a specific amount of water, it's best to add the water to it and just keep checking your gravity. Same with this. And as you add it should start with a pretty high gravity. And then as you add more water, it'll lower till you get it in the range you want it. Same with this. So start with your gallon or whatever of the agave nectar, blue agave nectar syrup, and start adding water until you get about a 1075, 10, or thereabouts gravity. And then just, add your oyster shells to that and your nutrients as they call for. Well, mine's it kind of open. I open it up and check on it a lot, and when that happens, stuff goes in. It's not sealed. I got the top on it, which has a rubber ring, so it's not really getting a lot, of open. It's not true open, but it's getting opened up, and anything can enter in there. But over time, it's still if you let it sit long enough, and this has gone much longer than I wanted it to. My column was broken, the glass, so I've been waiting on a replacement for that, and so I put it off like 3 weeks more than I wanted to, and this is why. But as soon as it clears, run it, if you can. If you can't, not the end of the world. What's going on, Frank? Awesome. Got your little electric setup coming. That's good. Yeah, electric's definitely the way to go. I'm going to get mine set up. I was talking to Phil about that yesterday and today. Yeah, the agave syrup's very expensive. And if this is your first, if I'm guessing it's probably not your first fermentation or your first rodeo. So if it is, I highly recommend kind of putting it off until you get your feet wet. If so, but if it's not and you've done it before, yeah, just whatever you can afford in the blue syrup, buy it, and put it in a gallon of water. Check your check your hydrometer, and just keep adding syrup or water, accordingly to you till you get the volume you want. And I don't know what size still you have. If you have a 5 gallon still, so you're going to need at least 5 gallons. So if you start with a gallon of agave, start adding water, which is probably going to get close to 3.5, 4.5, some 4 around that range, and you'll get pretty close. But you never know, so exactly how syrupy your agave is going to be. I'm sure it varies from brand to brand. So the amount of water you're going to be able to add to it's going to vary. I wish it were just cut and dry. You can say, yep, get the agave syrup. I mean, if you've done a specific type, you can kind of do that, but just, I don't know what's available to you. But it is expensive. It is very expensive. So, but it's also, pretty good stuff. Got a buddy that makes it. I can check with him and see. If you're watching, chime in, bro. Let us know, Jeff. Yeah, lactose infection. It's best for it to happen at the end, though, instead of competing with your yeast and stressing the yeast. But if it happens at the end, when your yeast are done, they're dying off, they're alcohol tolerancy, it's reached the tolerant level, or it's just at the end of what you need them for. All the sugars are gone, so they're pretty much done their thing. There's not a lot of sugars for the lacto to eat, so they're going to be limited in how much they can reproduce. But they can start consuming some of your alcohol, so you don't want to let them sit in there forever and ever. Yeah, but it can give it some creamy, soft notes. So it's not the end of the world if it happens. Some people welcome it. Some people would prefer it didn't happen. But if it does, make sure you keep everything good and clean. That way it doesn't start up early. The next time, if you have it happen early, it can cause a lot of stuck fermentations and a lot of problems and issues, and can mess things up really bad. Yeah, back set vinegar. Put a cork one in, and or just turn the valve if you got a valve at the end of your worm. Some people put a valve on the outside. But yeah, put a cork in it and just fill her up with back set vinegar, citric acid, and water. Any of that would work. Ginger bug, yeah. Or you can just add Greek yogurt. If you want lacto, just add some Greek yogurt at the end, towards the end of fermentation. That's or just save your lacto when you get one in a jar and just add it. That way you don't it's, for sure gonna happen. But yeah, watch your gravity, like Clinton's talking about, watch your gravity. So when your gravity's up there, don't add it then. Wait till your gravity gets 1020, and then you can add it. And then by the time it formulates, you'll probably be at 1010, and it can eat the rest of the sugar or compete with the yeast for the sugar, and you can get that creamy note that you want. After the Maggie, they're pretty strict about what they let in there. So, but after that's over, there'll be quite a few parties. There's some always at the Comfort Inn, and there's always, different parties going on. And go to an after party, and there'll be plenty of sampling going on. Well, and if you're in Arizona, it's a perfect thing to make, and you may be able to get some blue agave pretty cheap there. You know, they may be able to bring it in and bring it in pretty cheaply, because they're not shipping it halfway across the U.S. Just coming across the border there. But yeah, it's definitely warm there, and it's definitely a warm climate fermentation that will appreciate the temperatures we're having right now. I don't know about 105 or 10. So do it in the shade if you're in Arizona. Yeah. Yeah, you can do the same with rum, with the uh, either the brown sugar or using the molasses, same exact thing. You just add the water, use your hydrometer to tell you how much you need to add. It's very, very similar actually. Yeah, you're right. Awesome, awesome. So did you get a 5 gallon bucket or a gallon, or how much, because it does take quite a bit and it is pretty expensive. But buddy of mine makes it, and I'll just say his first name. Jeff makes it, and man, it's some of the best. He ages it in a barrel, and I'm telling you, man, I used to drink a lot of tequila back in my days, and that is he makes some of the best tequila I have ever drank, if not the best. And he keeps promising to send me some. So if you're listening, I've been checking my mailbox and I'm not seeing it yet. But hopefully I'll see him soon. He'll bring me up some, because he kind of spoiled me. He gave me some of the clear and some of the aged and barrel aged. And man, I mean, the clear's good. Definitely not the best I've ever drank, but it's good. But that aged, man, it was the same as the clear, but aged. It just does it, man. It makes it. Hello, Miss Tammy. How are you doing? Yeah, it is shot time. Man, I tell you what, that little last one about parched my throat. I'm gonna have to take a little swig of something else down here. It won't be that. That's empty. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I thought I drank more than that of that. I'm glad there's more there than I thought. Little multi-grain. Yeah, that's a little easier. That's not 140 proof. A little easier to drink that. 13 gallons. So you run about a 10. I'd run 10 and a 13. If 13 to the very tippy top, then it means you got about a 10 or 11 gallon still. And you always want to leave a pretty good little gap there for foaming. If you've ever just boiled plain water, you can't even boil water without foaming and frothing and all this. So leave you plenty of headspace there. That way you won't have to worry about puking and dealing with anything like that. I think 10, 11 and a 13 gallon pot be fine. 10 be great. So I'd make me a 10 gallon recipe and use 10 gallons in it and stick with that. But a lot of times copper pots, they'll say 13 gallons or 10 or 15 or whatever, and they'll measure it to the bottom of the cape. So that cape coming up gives you that space that you need. So a true 13 is to the bottom of the cape, and it doesn't include the cape going up. That's the way you should be measuring your steels. Some will do it properly that way. Some will measure it to the very tippy top. So you kind of, got to look at your makers, and they measure them differently. So, but yeah, run a 10 gallon recipe, which means a couple of gallons of blue agave with about 8 gallons of water, thereabouts. It's going to vary. So I'd start with, probably 6 gallons of water. Check, use your hydrometer, check where you're at, and then add water, and you can get, you don't get it too high. You don't want to get it too high. 1080, 1070 in that range, 1075 would give you pretty good volume and pretty good flavor as well. Did you first raw sugar banana wash? It started out fermenting strong for a couple of days and stopped. A couple of days later, it started back again and went ape shit. What would cause that? Temperature, could be temperature. It might have gotten a little cool and then got warm again. It's just getting really, really warm. Could have just been, it's if you're just going by the bubbles, there's a lot of things that could have been, going through a pH kind of drop. The yeast may have not been fully multiplied and just been multiplying over time. It's hard to say. It is hard to say, but making sure anytime you do heavy raw sugar, make sure that you get those oyster shells in there, because you tend to get, like on the rums we were just talking about with brown sugar, or with the blackstrap or molasses, or the blue agave syrup. Anytime you're using stuff like that, even corn syrup, people have done just corn syrup or just plain dextrose and water. Um, and it's anytime you do that, you have a tendency for the pH to crash pretty hard. One thing I can say is, running it slow is great. 106 proof is good. Let it air out. Open up your jar, and just a lot of times those volatiles, even though if you run it low and slow and you make decent cuts, we do know that there's heads and foreshots all the way through it, and it can kind of overpower it. The smaller the steel, the more it can happen. Also, if you have like a 10-gallon steel and half-inch plumbing, or a 15-gallon steel with half-inch plumbing coming off of it, even if you're running it slow, the pressure inside there is getting to a point where it's hard to control how it boils off. It tends to get a higher temperature and cook off altogether, and it makes it much more difficult to make cuts. Whereas, if you have like an inch and a half or a 2-inch spool coming off, and you've got plenty, it doesn't build up pressure, then you're going to probably, not be able to heat it more slowly and evenly and get a little bit better separation and make better cuts. That's why generally the steels with those larger diameter caps and, lin arms that are coming off into smaller worms, tend to do better and make better liquor than smaller steels with half-inch lines coming right off top. It's the pressure. And it heats up inside there, and it causes the mix inside there to jump in temperature, and it's hard to control the temperature even if you cut it back. So, but open the jars up and let it air out for a day or two. You can put like I was showing last week, you can just take the ring and take your lid out, and then just take a napkin. You don't have to do coffee filters gets expensive. They're not cheap. So you can use a paper towel, just put over the top of it, just a small square, and just put that on, seal it over top of it, and leave it open, right? And I think I've got maybe, we got some Kleenex here, but I'll describe what I'm doing. So this is a napkin instead of a Kleenex, but just put it over like that and just loosely tie it. And that right there will keep dust out of it, but it's porous enough, especially like a paper towel. It'll allow it to breathe, and a lot of those volatiles, or you can leave it open if you're not worried about dust and stuff getting in there, and a few little flies, fruit flies. But let it open, leave it open like that day or two. Yes, you lose a little bit of the ethanol as well, but a lot of those higher volatiles will evaporate off pretty quickly. Another thing is just to put it in that jar, put the lid on when you're done with that, and put it on the shelf and let it sit for about a month or two, and it'll estrify. And that will help, smoothing it out. Adding oats to your recipe will help. Also, if you're using sugar with your corn, using less sugar and depending more on conversion will help as well. Lactose infections tend to help smooth things out, and using barrels, to age it, or wood staves to kind of, but aging it, the esterification process, the maturation, that'll definitely help cut down on the hotness. So, we talk about last week, somebody was talking about, the isopropyl, what we call that is an astringent. An astringent flavor. It tastes real alcohol-y, and I've heard it described that way, and I know that's not a word, but it's a good description of it. It tastes kind of alcohol-y, and people say, well, it's supposed to taste like alcohol. You make it, but they mean to say it tastes a lot like isopropyl, and you actually do have isopropyls in there. So that's one of the higher volatiles that you can let it kind of evaporate off pretty quickly. It'll evaporate a little bit faster than your ethanol will. So leaving that jar open will help do that. And there's a few other things, that you can do. But if you've got sugar, in cornmeal, which is perfectly fine to do. I know some people say that's not a moonshine, it's not corn. It's a distillate. It's some would say it's a corn flavored sugared wash, and I wouldn't argue with that. But I did it for a long, long time and made good liquor. Uh, but it's not the best. We know that doing the conversion will definitely make it smoother. So if you're not converting and you're having to add a little bit of sugar, or if you're dealing with incomplete conversions and having to add a little sugar, it's not the end of the world. But getting better at doing the conversions will definitely help. And if you can do it with just converting the sugars in the corn and other grains, whatever you're using, that certainly helps too. I'm thinking temperature as well. Temperature, pH fluctuations. Generally, though, when the pH goes down, it doesn't come back up on its own unless you got those. If you had the oyster shells in there, that could have been it. It could have been pH crashing and started working on those oyster shells. And once those oyster shells buffered it, then it started back up. That's, if you had those in there, you might see a little bit of that. And it definitely helps it recover. That you will see that sometimes. Yeah, we're supposed to get hot here too, man. All week. We're in the 90s all week. Let me see if it's changed. The other day they said we were going to be 90, and it was shit. It was 94. So hopefully they're not that far off. Yeah, it's 97 right now here. They got 97. Oh, yeah, it's 97 right now. 97. No, it can't be. No, it just changed. It's 87 now. It was 97 today earlier. And tomorrow 95, 96, 95, 92. So Saturday it's going to be the last of the 90s, and then it's going to get in the 80s, which is fine with me. I don't run central air here. I save about 3,000 a year not running central air and central heat. I'll use a little oil filled air heaters to heat the rooms that I use, and I'm perfectly fine in the winter. And I got a window unit in the dining area that does the dining, kitchen, and living area, and I've got a fan in the bedroom. And until it gets 100, I'm fine. It gets 100. I wish I had another AC in the bedroom, but I may put a window unit in there. But it's just, I save a few thousand a year, and I don't mind it being warm and a little bit warm. Some people are like, oh my God, it's so hot, I'm melting. And I'm like, I'm fine with it. And that could very well be the case. It could have gotten down in the night. The temperatures drop, and the AC, tends to do a little better job. And so the temperature is probably closer to 74. And then during the day, the AC will stay on, may not be able to keep up as much. So temperatures may sneak up, a few degrees, and that could cause it. But yeah, it's possible. But just be glad it is back to work, and that's the best thing. Yeah, I didn't even see it. I don't think my little weather app doesn't tell me the heat index or the feel like temp. What's going on, Kirk? Good to see, brother. Yeah, happy 4th of July, man. Hopefully everybody has a good time this weekend. We're not going to be here for those that just tuned in. We're not going to be here Saturday. So hope everybody gets out and has a good time with family and friends. Who knows? I may go up and see old Philbilly this weekend or something. Was planning on doing something maybe with my daughter, but she has plans. So I guess, does that sound any different, any better now? I guess I can. Well, I don't have to monitor my mic. Does that sound louder now that I just hit that button to y'all? Or maybe I can just hear it feeding back now through the box I got. They got me a little box to run my microphone through. Can y'all tell if does that sound any different right there versus that, or right here, this right here? Can y'all tell any difference at all? Audio check. I can't. Well, It might be just I can hear myself in my headphones with it set on and I can't without it. So that may be the only difference. Yeah, I hope you do too, Tammy. Hope you and your family have a good one. I hope you're feeling better. So fortunately, by Saturday, it's going to be a little bit cooler, so that'll be nice. But I don't mind it. I'd rather it stay in the 80s though. That's for sure. Let me check it again. But yeah, it's 87 now. Was 97. Yeah, Saturday 92, 71 for the low. But that's good distilling and good. Oh, might rain. That's not good. That's not good at all. Hopefully, it don't rain on the parade. But that's good temperatures for fermenting outside. 90 during the day and 70 at night, averaging about 80. If you got your daily yeast and yeast like that prefer the little bit warmer, that'll work fine. Man, does this microphone pick up with this monitor, man? It's like I can hear everything that's crackling, and I think I can hear Ann over there with a bag of chips or something. I can hear everything. My chair squeaking and stuff. Let me turn that off so I don't have to hear myself. I did hear that in Europe, I guess in England, we got some people in England as well, viewers. But it's a heat wave over there. They're having very unseasonably record-setting highs. Not a lot of air conditioning. It generally stays a little cooler there than here. It doesn't normally get in the hundreds, but they've been getting some 100-degree temps over there, man. And a lot of elderly and a lot of people passing away, in their houses and stuff. They don't have AC and they're not used to dealing with this. And it's sad. There's been a lot of people that's passed away due to the heat. So prayers for them and their families. But Sheen, I'll have to dig out some of my photos and stuff. I can send you on my phone. Most of them are on my phones, but I don't have them on here. But I'll send you a couple of pics of some of my old setups and show you what I'm talking about. But yeah, running it that way is pretty efficient. If you have it set up and you can clean it in place and rinse it out and clean it in place, it's pretty handy. If you have to take it down every time, it's a pain in the ass. Does anybody know how long the peach harvest lasts there near Maggie Valley? Would you like to pick some up while you're there? So you're going to bring some peaches. Oh, you want to pick up? Okay. No, that's a good question though. I'd say it's definitely going to be, a little different every year based on it was cold here later in the spring, which may have slowed things down a little bit. I know here, I don't know exactly there, Georgia and Carolina. See if there's any projections. Yeah, harvest runs from late May through early September with peak in July and August. So yeah, it should be perfect time. It'll be the perfect time in North Carolina. So different varieties, early ripening varieties like the Spring Prince and June Gold are the first to hit the local stands. Peak season June through August, July being peak. And there's a lot of peach festivals in mid-July. So yeah, they should definitely should be plenty of peaches when you go. Yeah, it's hot, man. It's getting warm in this basement. Usually it stays in the 70s, but I think we may be upper 70s down here. Yeah, you got to do some misting and keep some air on their leaves and let them respire. What's going on, Carl? Good to see you, man. Yeah, turn those fans on them helps them, and misting them helps a lot with some fan. Just be careful, don't get them around the lights. You don't want to explode those bulbs. What's going on, Ola? How you doing, brother? Good to see everybody trickling in. Hope everybody's having a good week so far. I hope everybody has a lot of fun plans for this weekend. I got to try to remember. Yeah, I didn't get to share to that group, so and well, I got about 10, 12 minutes to go, so I'll have to share the rest of those. I didn't get near as many shares as I normally do, and I went slow. So much for that idea. I think whoever said that was wrong. But I did send them a message and asking about it, and that's what I got back from Facebook. But I'm just guessing that I think it's normally 10 that you can share to. So I think I've been kind of blessed that I can normally share to about 13 to 15 before it shuts me down. So maybe they're being lenient towards me. So maybe I better not lick that gift horse in the mouth. Maybe, I don't know. But for the people that were looking for the recipe, I am going to upload this this book. It's called Distilling the Spirit of Mexico. It's an actual book. And I'm also going to put up a simple recipe. I think it's one Mr. Wagon Maker shared. And I'm sure he doesn't mind us putting it up there. He's shared quite a few files with us in the past in there, so I don't think he would mind a bit. Matter of fact, I'm going to do that right now. While it's a little bit slow, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it's called Tequila Distilling the Spirit of Mexico. It'll take me about a second. So if you're not in the group, you can see it streaming at the bottom, DIY Shine and Steel Building. Join that group and you'll see it. It's in a PDF form. You can, okay. So it's called the Tequila. It's got some strange symbols I'm going to take out. So no, I'm not. I can't edit it. But Distilling the Spirit of Mexico, it looks like a very interesting read on the history and a lot of information on it. I'm not sure so much how good of a recipe is in there. So I'm going to go ahead and add a Moonshine Life recipe that old Wagon Maker shared a while back. In another group that I grabbed. And I'm not taking his name or anything off of it, so I don't think he'll mind. He's a pretty good feller. So there. So if you're in the group, it's new. I just got uploaded. If not, join us on DIY Shine and Steel Building. It's scrolling at the bottom, so just go to Facebook, search that, send a request. We'll get you out in there and just say you saw it on on the podcast, and we'll get you right in there. Just mashed in a rice and oat vodka. Man, that sounds good. Yeah, the rice, that should make a pretty good distillate. Did you convert the starches and everything in the rice and add the amylase and cook it and go through all that? Oh, that'll work out pretty well. I'm doing a potato, a potato mash that I used. I didn't use near enough potatoes. I used, let's see, probably around 100 pounds. So I used about 4 or 5 pounds per gallon, and I should have doubled that. So I had to add a little bit of sugar. Yeah, it's going to get hot. Definitely going to get hot. I wonder if you could run those through a cane press and just press out the juices. But I'm sure there's probably some starches in those stalks. Let's see how much. Let's see what old AI has to say. I think I searched this before, and there's not a whole lot, but some. Practically none. Yeah, so there's not a lot of starches. So maybe if you could just extract the juice. It's mostly structural carbs, cellulose, and hemicellulose, and lignans. So you may end up getting quite a bit of methanol out of it. But the cellulose will kind of break down if you get some cellulase. You will get quite a bit of methanol from it, but you'll also get ethanol. You can definitely, from the cellulose, you can definitely get some ethanol, but you'll have to use a different enzyme. You'll have to use a cellulase, and that is different. It may be a little harder to source, and that's kind of how they make wood alcohol too, and it's quite a bit more expensive and difficult to technically to make methanol than it is ethanol. So imagine that. You have to go to quite a bit of effort to get pure methanol. Like maple sap. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you can find somebody that's got a cane press, that would be pretty nice. Run the corn stalks through it and get you some, and maybe use some corn syrup along with it, and cook it down like maple sap. Yeah, I think that'd work. Be pretty interesting. Be a cool experiment, man. But I do know the cob. When they back in the old days, they would ground cob and all, and make cob. They used to make corn cob wine with just the cobs. So yeah, but yeah, I think I'd check that before. So I think somebody asked, might have even been you that asked before. Talking about starch and sugar content in the actual stock itself. So you've got cellulose, which is a structural carb, but you'll have to use a specific enzyme to break cellulose down. And a pectic enzyme might help, might break it down partially, but a cellulase is definitely what you need. When you run a vodka mash, how many times do you run it through your still if you don't have a column still with plates? If you've got a deflegmator, you don't have to have a column still. You can have just a spool. I was talking about earlier, just a tall spool. It's just a 2-inch spool with a ferrule at each end, and it's tall. So it's technically not a column. It's just a spool. And if you put a deflegmator at the end of that spool, you can just use that deflegmator to create reflux and increase your proof considerably. So you technically don't have to have the bubble plate column. I mean, with just a deflegmator sitting on top of a large spool with a sight glass on top of it to to see how much reflux I had going on with the copper mesh inside the sight glass. I was able to pull 187 proof, no problem at all. So you know if I'd have cooled that water down going into that deflegmator, I'm pretty sure I could easily hit 190. Or if I would have increased the flow and cooled it off, I could have probably lowered, gotten more, reflux and gotten into the 190s. But yeah, 187, I was shocked that it was coming off at 187 with just a deflegmator and a tall spool, not technically no bubble plates, no column, just a spool with some copper mesh, and it had a sight glass at the top of the spool, was maybe 2 feet on top of ever 18 and a half with it's the football type steel. Remove the football reducer going into a 2 foot spool. It's about 2 foot tall, sight glass, deflegmator, and then I had the T going off and infusing on one side and just coming straight off on the other. I didn't turn the deflegmator on when I first started, and I worked off the fours and heads, and then I turned the deflegmator on, or started flow through it. That way I wouldn't compress heads and fours back into the steel. Worked pretty well. Are fermentables always exact with weight to gravity ratio? Not following what you're saying, but as far as weight, as far as certain different grains and stuff, no. You've got so many varieties that contains different amounts of sugars, and even the same variety grown differently in different places can contain different sugars. So gravity will tell you how much sugar's in there, but it doesn't tell you that those are fermentable or not. So it just tells you how much sugars are in there. So sometimes you can have some polysaccharides in there that it's showing on your hydrometer, but they're not fermentable. So it can show you 1080 and you think, all right, it's good, I'm ready to go. But that could be 1080 of polysaccharides, and you may not get any. You're going to get some, of course. There's going to be some simple sugars combined with it, but you may not get anything happen at all, unless so. Oh yeah. Now, yellow dent, no, but a pound of sugar, if it's the same type of sugar, like if you got domino sugar and you're using the same water, yeah, it's going to be exact. So every time you got 1 pound of sugar to 1 pound of water, and as long as you're testing it at 60-some degrees with your hydrometer, it's always going to be pretty much exact. Yeah. But yellow dent, no. You're going to get, again, it's going to give you different amounts and depend on your conversion, No problem, Indy. Again, if we didn't answer everything completely, we can go into more detail. But yeah, you don't have to have the fancy, plates and all that to get, high proof. But a deflegmator will definitely get your reflux to where you don't have to have that. But it certainly helps. It will definitely help, and it'll help your flavor profiles and makes it a lot easier to do. But yeah, with your yellow dents, some, if you don't get a full conversion, it may show that 1080, but it's not a true 1080 because it's showing them fermentables as well. So if you can do the iodine test and see if you still got remnant starches in there, and if so, then you've got some unfermentables and you didn't get a good conversion. That's why some people do the iodine test afterwards. But yeah, that's one of the things, the hydrometer, it tells you how much sugars are in there, but it doesn't tell you whether they're fermentable sugars or not. So a lot of times people say, "Oh, I got a good conversion." You got the sugars out, but you didn't get them converted. So the sugars are there; they're just not converted sugars. That's why a lot of times, when I talk to people, they'll be like, if you didn't, it's still not too late. You can add some of that yellow label angel yeast in there, and it'll start converting what didn't get converted. But it's going to take time. Or sometimes you can throw glucose in there, and you'll get a little bit more, branched off. But Yeah, it's definitely a good thing to have that yellow label on there for if you don't get anything to happen and all your parameters are right, your temperature's right, your yeast is viable, you don't have pH crashing, everything's right, and you're just still not getting any activity. It could be because it's just not fermentable sugar. So try some yellow label instead of dumping the same yeast in over and over again and piling it up and making it yeasty as hell. Try throwing in some yellow label angel yeast in there and give it a couple few weeks and see what happens there. But it does take longer. It takes quite a while. Hey, you can puff passing here, man. You're good. We got a few puffers in here. I've known to puff a little bit in my days. Don't puff much anymore, man. I tell you, it doesn't make me feel good anymore like it used to. It's just getting too strong, or I'm getting too old, or a little bit of both. Hell yeah, man. Am I going to be with Alan on the 10th? I remember that show. Yeah. Not sure. I'm not sure what's going on the 10th. I'm not sure which show. Which one is it? Is it with Big Easy and them, or I need to get him on here though. I need to get up with him, get him on here. But if you're listening, Alan, I know you've been really busy and it's a transitional time of your life and you got so much going on. I do want to get you on here. I don't know if this is the perfect time to do it or the worst time to do it, but I definitely want to get Amanda and you on here and do a podcast on yeast propagation and strictly yeast and stuff. I know you both love that, and I know a little bit, but I'm definitely no professor at yeast propagation. I know the basics, but I'd like to have you guys on here because I know that's right down your wheelhouse, and y'all love that. Yeah, iodine's a great, easy way. I've been done for ages and ages. So you put the iodine on there, and if it turns dark, then I got a message. If it turns dark, then you've got conversion. If it's kind of orangey, you don't. See if I can find a picture of it. Images. So yeah, here's one. Let's see if that. Let me find better. That's kind of okay. Here's a good one. Yeah, I like this one. Well, damn. Okay. It's not. I'm just going to have to grab that. So it gets a real dark blue if there's still starch in it. If there's not any starch in it, it will kind of remain just an orangey kind of color that it is. But here's starch testing using different things. I guess that's about the best picture I'm going to get. I like using pictures because it's yeah, that should be fine. Shows them using it on bananas and other things, showing it, but I'd like to show it on something that, well, I guess the water in this one. So let me add this picture, and then I can explain it. Okay, so here you can see, and I'm gonna have to turn the chat off for just a second. So where it says water there, there's no starch present. So it'll give you that orange color. When starches are present, you'll see that dark. So sometimes it's a dark black or a dark bluish black when you do have starches present. So after you do your conversion, you can get some of your, your mash liquid out and put it in a little test tube, or just set it out in a shot glass or whatever, and start dripping some iodine in it. And if it turns black, dark blue, black, then you still have starches present. If you got a good conversion and it's all simple sugars, it'll look more like the water or the tofu, or kind of like the apple. Sometimes it gets a little bit dark, but not black like that. Sorry, that's the best picture I can find. But yeah, anytime it gets dark, that means there's starches present. And if it stays the orange, yeah. Let me turn the chat back on before I forget. Oh, still talking? Yeah, it's Big Easy in them. Yeah. Yes, sir. I will be there for sure, brother. Well, I got a room reserved. That sounds good. Yeah, there's a lot of florals used. Definitely sounds tasty. And you be very conscious of the yeast that you use for that, because it can help even give more floral notes. Sounds good, man. Sounds good. Floral taste kind of sweet. It's kind of difficult. It tastes like a flower smells, I guess, is about the, sweet and with the floral note. I guess it tastes kind of like a smelling a flower would taste. I guess is about the best way to describe it. It's kind of like, how does how describe a fart odor? It smells like shit. I guess it smells like a flower and floral. But it tastes kind of like a flower smells is kind of the best way I can describe it. It's just a sweet, um, flowery taste, I guess you could say. That is a good question. It's a hard thing to describe. I've never been good at describing things like that. I've never really had a good palate for picking up certain notes either. I can see people taste a drink of bourbon and say, oh, I'm getting a nuttiness up front, and I'm getting some caramel, and I'm getting this, that, and a little bit of cinnamon on the back end, all this. I can drink it, man. I'm getting bourbon. I might be able to get some softness. I'm getting a little corn, getting a little rye, but I mean, I'm just not, my palate just not like that. So I'd be probably a horrible mixologist. Well, not a mixologist, a blender, I guess. I just drank so much bourbon over time. I just can't pick up those notes. Sometimes I can get a vanilla note. Jim Bruins sent me some stuff. It was really, really good, and it had a good vanilla and what's the word I'm looking for? Caramel and vanilla notes to it, big time. It was good. Definitely pronounced. You knocked you out. It is very, very pronounced. Yeah, mimosa is really floral, and I've got trees, and my neighbor's got some trees. I've got a young tree, but yeah, there's a lot of different trees that they actually make some teas and some wines and some shines from. Yeah, it's hard to describe, brother. I'm glad you asked, because it just kind of tastes like a flower would smell. I guess if you were to eat a flower and it tasted sweet and you know florally. I know that's not a word, but But some yeast will give you kind of some floral notes as well from some like a mead where you just got honey and there's no floral nothing in it, and you can get some floral notes from it, and some like a D47 can give you some good floral notes. There's that's why it's important to in yeast selection. There's a lot of different um, strengths and weaknesses from each yeast to what you're distilling and or what you're mashed in. So there's a lot of specific things that you can use to get certain notes that you're looking for. What's going on, Dexter? Good to see you, brother. Yeah, it probably is a cheesecloth, and that's probably I was showing that earlier with the napkin or with the Kleenex. Cheesecloth would probably be the optimal thing to use. It would definitely allow it to breathe a lot better. But what they're doing, Dexter, is they're allowing a lot more volatiles to evaporate out. So anytime we distill in a pot still, we don't get that separation like you would in a fractional column. In a fractional column, they can get the highest alcohols out of the top, the hearts out of the middle, and in the bottom will be the heavier oils and alcohols and tails, infused oils and things. So when we do it in a pot still, you're getting a lot of mixed alcohols, isopropyls, isomils. You're getting a lot of different alcohols and esters and things coming off first. So isopropyl being one of them, there's a whole host of them, but those higher alcohols, they evaporate at a faster rate than ethanol. Now, if you leave, your jar open and put some cheesecloth over it, then I'm glad you brought that up because that's probably the best thing to use for that. Um, it allows it to breathe, and it allows a lot of those higher alcohols the ability to evaporate off, and it smooths the alcohol. So when the person was asking earlier about their 106 proof alcohol, and it still tasted, alcohol-y and very hot, it still had a lot of those higher, you know, alcohols in there that can evaporate off. And it's good to leave it open for a day or two to let those evaporate off, and then seal your jar up and let it sit for, a month or two, and let the rest of the esters and the acids that are in there, organic acids that are naturally occurring in there, esterify, and it'll make floral notes that we talk about and some other things, and it can make it smoother and taste much better, and it's sweeter. It can increase in the sweetness as well. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the cheesecloth. That's actually the best thing to use. Yeah, yeah, and it's earthy, dusty, earthy, dusty flavor to it. Yeah, especially like even the red corns. The Bloody Butcher to me tastes more earthy, dusty than just about anything that I've ever done. And your yellow dent corns will have a little bit of a dusty, earthy taste to it, I think, as well. Whereas some of your heirloom, like I've tasted some of the Oaxacan green, Ohio blues, probably not quite as dusty and earthy as some of the reds or some just the plain, yellow dent twos. Um, I agree though, Clint. But I think sweet corn and having the infuser with the cream corn and sweet corn definitely helps take some of that out and gives it just a good sweet corn flavor, like you just eating some damn corn. It's good. Yeah, earthy, dusty. I can see the distinction between the two, and yeah, I get that too. No problem, Doug. Good to see you, man. Hope you and your family and friends have a good Independence Day weekend. I hope everybody gets out and has a good time and has a safe time. Remember, it's there's going to be a lot of people drinking. Don't get out there and drink and drive. Drink responsibly and and definitely have a great weekend. And now it's time for me to share them links. We'll get the rest of them out there. Hopefully, sometimes when I get stopped that early, I don't get them all out there. So definitely going to have to get put Mark's a few other groups up the list here a little bit. So bear with me. I'm going to go ahead and get these two. And my buddies, I got to make sure I get them on there. Because we might not get them all. We will be done in just a second. I hate this dead air. I don't like having dead air. Okay, we got that one. And let me get my buddy Gary. Got to get them in there before I do any of these other ones. Okay. I think it's got it. All right, let me make sure I got Rogers in there. Well, I could have sworn I should. Okay, there it is. No, it's June 23rd. So, damn, I could have sworn I got Copper Steel Outlaws. We'll get that fixed real quickly. All right, there we go. Good deal. I thought sure I had them. Glad I looked. All right, that's done. Got all that taken care of. Yeah, a lot of lead, a lot of gunpowder, man. A lot of fireworks. So definitely be careful. Well, that's good to see, man. Got a TCB, baby. Got to take care of business, man. Did you get your car fixed? I need to put this Huggy on Mother Coke and keep it cold. Sounds good, man. All right. Can you touch on thumpers and how to properly use them to enhance flavor, whether it's with mash or another alcohol mixture, what's okay to use and what's not, etc.? Okay. Well, originally thumpers were used to get a second distillation. It wasn't a true second distillation. It didn't double, improve. But back in the days, we didn't generally have the starting gravity. We didn't have the hydrometers. Most moonshiners, distillers did in place like that. But in large commercial distilleries have always had hydrometers, been around for 100 years or more. But shiners traditionally didn't have the hydrometer. We didn't get sometimes good conversions. We didn't have the high temp alpha amylase and the liquid glucose that we have now. And we didn't have the knowledge. And we used a lot of malted grains and used a lot of sugar. But a lot of times the alcohol that came off was generally, 100 proof, 110 maybe, and didn't get as high proof as they'd want, didn't get the volume that we'd want. So a lot of times they'd run it a second time. And of course you'd get a higher proof when you proof it down to 80, run it again, you get a higher proof. So they started using thumpers to get that second distillation. And back then, we would load the thumpers with what was called backens, or um, basically tails. So all your tails would be collected after each run. After you made your cuts, your head cuts, your heart cuts, then the tails come, and you just run that into a bucket. And then the next time you ran, you just pour those tails into your thumper, and it would increase your production quite a bit. Um, Basically, tails, a lot of times they'll have 80 or 90 proof, and that's pretty much alcohol as you're going to get in a lot of bottles that you buy in a liquor store. So there's a lot of ethanol in those tails. There's a lot of fusel oils and other things, but there's still a lot of alcohol in those tails, and it's easy to get them out in subsequent runs. So we'd pitch the fours and the heads, save the tails, and some people save heads to go in it, and they call it all faints run. It's an all faints run. So they would just basically save up all their tails, all their heads, not the fours, but just the heads and the tails, put them in a bucket, and then proof it down less than 80, put it in the still and run it, and run an all faints run. A lot of people would put that, proof it down and put it into a thumper and increase production tremendously. So it was originally kind of designed to help up the proof on, lower gravity distillations, but found that, you could put the tails in there and get a lot more production and get a lot more alcohol to sell, right? So it was great economically. It wasn't necessarily done for anything but economics. It just increased the amount. It made use of those tails instead of just throwing out a lot of alcohol. It made a lot of sense. It's very economical, and it saved money. And shiners were always looking to how to increase profits without sacrificing flavor and saving on time. And it saves both on time and it, and economically was a sound decision. Fast forward years and years, and they started adding flavors and infusing, a lot of things into it. So they'd not just add tails. Sometimes they'd add tails and some of their mash in there, and that would get the more of the flavor of the mash to carry forward, and that worked well. Fast forward from that to now, and now they're putting a lot of concentrates in there, and the thumpers have become smaller, and they're more of an infuser than a thumper now. Some people will eliminate the thumper altogether and just run infusers and come right off the pot still into infusers and infuse flavors that way. Jar rigs, are one of the types. I would highly recommend using small copper vessels with drains on them. That way you don't have to be unscrewing a 200-degree jar, to change out. But they add a lot of flavor done that way. You're getting a little bit of redistillation, so you're getting a second distillation. Vapors condense, leaves a lot of water, and water's behind. You increase your proof. So it's definitely efficient, and it's a great way to infuse flavors as well. Definitely not something, a lot of people that have thumpers on their can't, they have a still that came with a thumper. They got a 3-pot and they run it every time they do everything. And really you don't necessarily need it every time that you want to run it. So it's not necessarily something that should be used every time. It's certain things that works well, and it works great for running your tails and increasing, your output. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can, you can put mash, right. You can put, your grains in the thumper. So because you're not heating it directly, you're using the steam. It's you can increase your flavor that way. I like just using like cream corn and just pureed up corn. You can take corn cob, sweet corn cob and all, and run it through a grinder and put some cream corn in there and just put it in a blender and just make it real smooth. That way you don't have a risk of, puking up kernels into your, condenser coils or whatever. But it helps the flavor out tremendously. Or you can put, like Clint's talking about, you can put your mash in there, or you can put a combination of tails and mash and just help get that flavor. I definitely recommend trying some cream corn and some sweet corn ground up, or pureed. Definitely add some good sweet corn flavor to your corn liquor, man. You'll be slapping your lips, man. You'll be highly impressed with what it'll do, especially with like jar rigs or a small thumper. Generally, thumpers are a third the size of a steel, but if you have a drain in it, you can get by with a smaller one, and you can use less amounts to infuse. Because if you got a 20-gallon steel and a 7-gallon uh, thumper, coming up with 5 or 6 gallons to put in that thumper to infuse with, you don't ever want to fill them up, because it's gonna, you're gonna have a lot of water um, sticking around and in that in your infusers or in your thumpers, because it's kind of like that second distillation. You're going to get higher proof coming out, and anytime you do that, you're leaving water behind. That's why you're increasing proof, is because you're leaving water behind. But yeah, I'm glad Clint mentioned that. When you infuse it, you can put things in there that you normally wouldn't put in the steel because of scorching. Because basically all you have coming through there now is steam. So it's kind of like a steam jacketed steel. It's like beans don't burn on the grill kind of thing. You got that steam, and it's not going to scorch, anything you put in there. So you're going to get, it's going to carry those flavors forward better for you, and you're not going to get any scorching going on. So, but be careful when you do that to sparge it. Don't get yeast because that's not going to be a real good flavor, and it's not going to be real good. But if you can kind of separate the grain, leftover grains in your mash and stuff, and get some mash juice and kind of sparge out any of the yeast bed, that would help a lot for sure. But it'll definitely add a lot of flavor. But you don't have to get good cream corn either. You can get that. You can go get that cheap stuff in the big cans, and it works really well. And just regular old sweet corn. And for those that have Meyer around you, I don't know if all the Meyers are doing it, but this week, starting tomorrow, 25 cents an ear, 4 ears for $1. So last time they did it, it was 20 cents an ear. Man, I got a bunch of corn. So we got all kinds of corn in the freezer. And I'm like, and it looks like we're going to do more corn. I mean, she spent like 2 days putting up corn, cooking it, and she cooked it in a big pot. Not my steel, but I recommend it. I don't know. Did you, babe? Did you cook that corn in my steel, or was it just the big pot that we got? Okay, I wasn't sure. But I got a pretty big pot. Hell, I got a 30-gallon pot we can put in there. Yeah, we could put 100 pounds in there. But yeah, I love corn. So, and I mean, I've eaten some corn that's been in the freezer for a year and a half, 2 years, and the way she does it, she blanches it, and we put it up blanched and freeze it, and it's real good, and it'll keep for a while. So I love some corn. So we're definitely, but we're gonna eat a lot of that sweet. Hell, I may grind up some and freeze it just to use for my infuser, right? So got a little vacuum sealer. I may vacuum seal some corn puree for just that purpose. Glad I thought of that. I believe, for a matter of fact, I'm definitely going to do that now I think about it. But I'm gonna put carbonol in it. 3 gallon, that'll work. Try to, if you can, put a drain in it. That way, if it starts puking, you can just drain it out. And if you have an infusion port in the top, that'd be even better. That way you can drain it out and re-infuse or put more tails in there. Definitely helps. Right. Now, if you've got a lemon arm pointing up, you're going to get less condensation. So you're going to get less filled up on your thumper. If it's straight out, you're going to get a little bit more. And if you got the Kentucky lemon arm that points down, you're going to get even more. Also, good point, Clint. Also, how far away from the steel it is and how much condensation is going to happen between the steel and the thumper. So I've seen people plumb up, a huge copper thing going 5-6 feet in the air, going way over about 6-8 feet, and then coming down 6-8 feet into a thumper. You're going to get a lot of condensation in something like that. So if you can keep it closer to the steel, it generally works a little better for you. That's what this is. It's technically a white and yellow, like a peaches and cream, but it's not truly. Everybody says, "Oh, it's that GMO corn." All corn's GMO, but this is a variety that's not a peaches and cream, but it's damn good, and I like it. But it is the white and the yellow, but it's not a true peaches and cream. But yeah, peaches and cream was, back in the day, was one of my favorites. And if you know a farmer and you know somebody growing that, that's awesome. But a lot of the white yellow combination that you get in the stores these days is not a true peaches cream. Heirloom type corn, they call it that just because it's yellow and white, but it's not a true peaches and cream. But it's really good. I can't wait to get it, man. I'm stoked. It starts this morning, so Wednesday morning the sale goes on. And I think Kroger's going to have a sale on ribeyes too, $10.99. Excuse me, but it's the family packs. They won't, it's the thin ones. They won't cut it special for you at that price. But we'll have to see what Meijer has. I think they've got strip. They might have some that's a little bit more, but they'll cut it. I go into there and they'll cut it for that advertised price. Whereas Kroger, I go into, and used to they did, but now it's like, no, that's for the family packs. It comes in that way. If you want the ribeyes that we've got here, they're $16.99. I'm like, no, and they're like that thick, which isn't bad, but I like thick steaks, and I don't like the 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch steaks. They're fine, but I like the bigger, thicker steaks, and I like medium rare, and I like searing them and getting them juicy. Man, it's so good. But yeah, I'll pay a little bit more for a better cut too. Right. Insulating it, helps a lot. So anybody that doesn't know, the foam that you put on your pipes at home, you can get that in larger sizes, or you can kind of split it in half and tape it up and insulate. I mean, it's not pretty, but it's functional. But when it comes out of I've seen people do that, and they insulate it coming from the steel all the way into the thumper, and then out of the thumper all the way into the condenser. And I'm like, really, you don't need it coming out. So just the inlet. And also for people that's not familiar with running thumpers and first time thumper runners, make sure that the downcomer, okay, it's called a downcomer. So in a thumper, you'll have one tube inside that goes all the way almost to the bottom, and the other one will be almost next to the lid. Always make sure that long downcomer is coming from the steel into the thumper and pushing out through the juices, up and out the top through the barely, one that's close to the lid and out that way. I've seen people get them reversed, and it doesn't work well. Foot from the keg, perfect. That'll work out well. A white redneck, yeah. Or maybe that's just a white dog. A white dog. A white dog, baby. Yeah, I used to drink a lot of White Russians. That's just Bailey's, isn't it? Candy corn and a silver queen. Yeah, my grandfather used to grow it. We used to grow it too, and they had heirloom green beans. You can't get these days. Half runners you can't find anymore. But yeah, it's I love peaches and cream. But this stuff is really good. I mean, it's probably an imitation peaches and cream, and it may actually be a peaches and I guess anytime it's yellow and white, I guess they call it peaches and cream. But back in the day, it was a pretty good variety. Silver Queen is very good corn. What's going on, Bennett? Doing good, brother. Okay, so advice on the 111. If I'm doing 10 pounds of grain and I'm looking to steep those grains instead of cook those grains, how many gallons of water do I need? So you'll need about 2 pounds of grain, two and a quarter pounds of grain for every gallon. So if you're wanting, how big's your steel? So if you're wanting to do, if you've got 10 pounds of grain, then that's going to be about 5 gallons of water, right? And that'll be about a two gallons of, or I'm sorry, 5 gallons of water, 2 pounds per gallon, and 10 pounds of grain. Now, if you're talking about the 111, that's for not converting. So that's just the sugar. And I would go, if you're just doing sugar, cornmeal, or ground up corn and water without doing the conversion with the amylase or the malted grain, then I would use a little bit more than a pound of sugar, because you're not going to get a whole lot of sugar unless it's a sweeter corn. But if it's like a yellow dent, you're not going to get much sweetness out of that, or a cornmeal, right? But if you're using a better corn, a sweet corn, then you're going to get some more sugars out of that naturally than you would from a yellow dent for sure. But if you're doing the conversion, you don't really need the sugar unless you just need to bump it up and you didn't get a good conversion. So if you do two and a quarter pounds with your high temp amylase, cook it at 185 to 90 degrees and steep it. You don't have to cook it. You can steep it, but make sure that it maintains that temperature. So we're talking about 5 gallons of water, 10 pounds of corn. So you're going to start with 3 pounds of boiling water. You're going to add the cracked corn or ground up corn to that and stir it up good and let that set. And as it gets to 185, you'll take you'll have 3 gallons, right? We started with, or 2 gallons to the side that are still boiling. So we started with 3, and we're going to have 2 gallons to the side boiling. So we're going to add, maybe a half gallon each time every 15, 20 minutes. And we're going to do that and maintain that 185, 90 range for 90 minutes plus. And, that way you get for sure a good, gelatinization on your corn. Does it always take that much? It depends on the corn, and no, it doesn't. But we want to make sure that you overkill it to make sure that you get it done and get a really good conversion, get all your starch hydrolyzed out of there so you can, get a good conversion. Then you add your, after 90 minutes, use the last of your water. When it gets to 185, add your high temp alpha amylase, liquid high temp alpha, and add that to it. You'll notice immediately as you stir it, it'll start thinning out real good for you, and just let that sit. And once it gets to, 140 or whatever your glucoamylase says on the label, It can be 100, it can be 120, it can be 140, depending on the manufacturer and type that it is. Some of them are combination that has different glucose and beta, amylase in there. So you're gonna have to just go on what the label says and what temperature to add that, and then after that you can check your gravity and see what kind of sugars you've got in there, and you can use the iodine to test to see if it's black or real dark. Then you may still have some starches in there, so you may just let it sit overnight, let give that glucose more time to work, and then check it the next day for starches, and maybe those glucose will have glucose will be able to debranch some of those dextrins and some of those oligosaccharides that may be 8, 10, 12 molecules long that the yeast can't eat, but still registering on your hydrometer. So after you do that, maybe the next day you're going to get, it's going to be orange. You're not going to have any starches, and then you'll, should have a pretty decent gravity. And if you don't, then you can, heat up a gallon or so of water, with, maybe a half gallon of water and start adding maybe a half pound of sugar to that. Make a good syrup. Don't scorch it, and just start adding that syrup, stir it in well, then check your gravity and keep doing that till you get to the gravity that you want. But hopefully we'll get that good conversion. We won't need that sugar at all. If it's 106070, I wouldn't add any sugar to it. You'll get a good tasting liquor, plenty enough gravity there for a good liquor. And, but if it's 1045 or 1050 and not, maybe bump it up a little bit, it's not going to take a lot, and it's not going to really make it real hot. But a lot of times people get kind of greedy and they'll want to put a whole bunch of sugar on top of it so they can get a whole lot. And it's really just making it hotter, and it kind of defeats the purpose. But, yeah, give it a good go. Okay, let's see. A boil, and how long do you think I should let it steep for? Yeah, 90 minutes. And like I say, keep adding some of that boiling water. Take 70% out, save 30 to the side, keep it boiling, and just keep adding it in, ladling it in as you needing it, to keep your temperatures up, right? And keep that thermometer in there. And anytime it gets down to 185, just throw a little bit more in there and keep it up above 185, and you'll get a good gelatinization in 90 minutes for sure, regardless of what the quantity is. And then, then use your high temp alpha when it gets back down to 180 and 185 again, and use that high temp, stir it in with the drill and the mud mixer or paddle. If you're using a paddle, I recommend getting that mud mixer, but yeah, then stir it up real good. And then when the temperatures get down to whatever your liquid glucose calls for, add that. And if you didn't get a good conversion, you can heat it back up to 185 and add some more alpha. Maybe sometimes the alpha amylase starts to get old over time and it's not as effective. So, you may have to heat it up, add some more to it. But at 180, 185, it's really active and it works real well. You could probably add it a little bit lower temperature than that, but the lower it is, the less effective it's going to be, down to a point where I guess when you get to 150, 60s, it's just not going to activate and work well at all. And that's about the point where the old out powdered stuff would work, in the 150, 55 range. But yeah, it's not hard. Just keep some separate water, keep some back. Don't use all your water up front, and just keep adding that, and then that'll help you keep it maintained. Adding insulation would help, whatever you're steeping in. But if you're steeping in a cooler, if you got a big cooler, that works really well because it'll hold that heat real well. And if you can, let it sit out in the sun all day. I think Clint mentioned this last week or before. If you can let that cooler sit out in the sun and get real good and hot, you don't have to worry about it cooling off as quick initially. Good idea as well. But if you are cooking it, if you cut way back on the heat and stir it and keep stirring it and use the burner to help maintain that heat, and you don't want to do the steep method, that works as well. But you always will run the risk of scorching. And depending on the burner, if you have one of those jet burners, it's pretty tough to keep it from scorching because it just focuses all that one heat in one spot, and it's really tough. But if you have a good banjo burner and a proper distance, and you can cut it down to where it's just a trickle. You can kind of steep and maintain temperature with just that low flame and run a lot less risk. And if you've ever cooked it before, it's for beginners. Steeping works well because you don't get the scorching. I scorched a lot when I first tried it, and I cooked it. So yeah. So we try to teach them to steep so they don't scorch it. But if you cut your heat way back, you can cook it and help maintain that heat and still add some water, keep it boiling on the side. But to each their own. But it is a good, safe way of doing it without scorching it. Right, right. And it is, especially once you start buying heirloom, if it's a yellow dent, okay, I've wasted 10 pounds of yellow dent. That's 1/5 of a bag that costs $12. So that's just a couple few dollars that you've lost. Not a big deal, right? And maybe 50 cents worth of amylase, not a big deal. Dump it, try again. Clean the pot. Have to bring out the 3M pad and clean the black off the bottom of the pot. But it's a lesson learned. And but once you get better at it, you can cook it and just cut it way back and kind of steep and cook at the same time. And if you have a separate burner that you can keep a separate water boiling on and adding it to it, that works well as well. Kentucky Wonder Beans, yeah, man. My grandmother had heirlooms from her grandparents and stuff, and some of the best greasy beans and half runners and probably Kentucky Wonder Beans. But yeah, they've been lost. She used to string those things up and put them on a thread. She'd take a needle and thread and just string through those beans and hang them and let them dry. Yep. They don't do that stuff anymore. Yeah, greasy bean. Yeah. Yeah, they were big old fat beans, man. I loved them too. Yeah, and some high temp amylase will tell you to add it before or while you're cooking or while you're steeping. For beginners, I wouldn't recommend it. I want you to see how thick it gets, and I want you to see how um, the high temp thins it out, because I want you to see the gelatinization stage, and then. But once you get seasoned, I guess you can do it all at the same time and just know it's happening. But I like seeing it gelatinized, and then I like adding it. That way I know I'm getting a good gelatinization, and then I can thin it out. But you don't have to. You can do it either way. It doesn't matter. But for me, I like to see it get gelatinized before I add that. But you don't have to. Yeah, they're a big old flat greasy, like a greasy bean. But yeah, she had. I don't know. It was. They did half runners. I remember, I went out there and I helped my grandfather garden since I was a kid. But yeah, they had three different varieties of bean: a greasy bean, half runners, and then this heirloom. I can't remember what it was, but it was something that she had, that her grandparents, from the 1800s. Yeah, yeah, you definitely don't want to add any of your malted grains or your glucose above 155, 150, 55, or it will denature. So always save your malt or your glucose or your beta glucanase. A lot of the glucoamylase, sometimes it'll contain a combination. Me and Clint's talked about this before. Sometimes it'll contain a combination of beta glucanase and glucoamylase. They're not the same, but sometimes it will be a combination. And there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, it's pretty effective. And sometimes it will add maybe some of the um, what is it? The Clint, the glucanase, I guess, to get rid of the glucans, and some of the glucans that can build up. So it'll have some of that sometimes combined with it, some of the glucanase. That'll get rid of some of if you have high uh, percentages of adjunct grains like a rye or a barley or a wheat. They get real gummy and gooey, or the oats. It gets real gummy and it's a glucan. So it's similar to gelatinization, but it's more snotty and clear, and it's just a different type of gelatinization that comes from the more grassier type grains, and they're heavy and it's a glucanase will help break those down. Sebamil and the Sebstar, the Sebamil and the Sebflow will help break those down. And some of these will be combinations. I think some of the stuff that Clint uses is a combination that has some of those things with it, and it definitely great for if you're adding some of those other grains. It's definitely good to have. And I think that's one of the reasons the temperatures will vary. Is maybe a different combination of branching enzymes that'll be combined together. So some of them will be 140, some of them 120, some of them call for 100 degrees. So it'll vary depending on the percentages and what's actually in that. Doing some watermelon, and it is literally boiling in the drum. Is that typical? Yeah, it works out pretty fast. Probably too, if you use the hydrometer and you probably added quite a bit of sugar with it. So those sugars, they tend to work off really quickly. They are very rapid work off, and they get acidic pretty quickly too. So be careful. And with your watermelon, try to keep that temperature down if at all possible. I let my temperatures get a little bit high, and I'll use the EC1118, and it probably way too high temp for that. And it created a lot of esters. It's fine if you want to do that, but that wasn't what I was shooting for. Excuse me. And it was a week before, I was the competition. So it had no chance of esterification. It's fine to do that if you want to set it in the jar for a month or 5 and let it esterify. But if it's right before, a competition, it's not going to have a chance to mature, esterify, and it's not going to be good. So keep those temps down, and maybe you won't get so much esters, and it'll be good right off the bat. Wasn't real happy with mine. It got a little bit too hot, and I think if I'd done it cooler, I think that would have helped a lot. Yeah, and again, I think that's based on the combinations, of what they may have in there, right? Is there? Okay, that's cool. No problem at all, man. No, hell no. Ask any question in any length and break it up any way you want to, man. We'll got you. Yeah, reduce. He's talking about like when you make a sap. When you take tree sap and you reduce it down, you're boiling off a lot of the water and retaining sugars and making more of a syrup, kind of like making maple syrup. You can do the same with watermelon or any fruit juice and make more of a concentrate that way, right? Leather breeches beans. I don't, but I remember her stitching beans up and drying them. And I'm not sure if she cooked those later, if it just to save the bean for planting next year, and drying it out so it didn't mold. I'm thinking maybe I don't know. I remember her stringing them up and just being hanging, big long threaded strings of beans just hanging there drying out. And I don't remember if she ever cooked them or if she just used those for seeds for the next year or what. I'm assuming seeds, but I don't know. Purple beans. That sounds good. Very interesting. Yeah, I love green beans. I like those saffrons. I mean, I remember many afternoons, growing up and getting a big newspaper and sitting in front of you and sitting in a little pot next to your little bucket and getting you a big old newspaper full of green beans and sitting there stringing it the strings in the garbage, snapping the beans and throwing those in the pot, sitting there watching TV and talking and, having the whole family together, grandparents and parents and grandchildren and aunts and uncles and everybody hanging around at the bean harvest, stringing beans. They don't get together and do that much anymore. I guess some farmer families still do that, but that's a tradition that's kind of getting lost, We get together every Sunday and eat, together and have a big Sunday meal after church. And I don't know if they do that much anymore, not either, Right. Yeah, and I think some of these liquid glucose, and I think some of these liquid amylase have a combination of the beta glucanase and the glucoamylase in them um, to help. I know some of that stuff that Clint was using. We figured out that he did that he was using had it, and I think it's a good thing to have. I've never heard of the rattlesnake beans. All right, Stephen. Good to see you, brother, and happy Independence Day, my friend. Stay safe, and we will see you next Tuesday. Let me see what day that's going to be. That'll be the 7th. So have a great weekend, my friend. Be safe. Yeah, yeah, definitely don't want to get too hot when you reduce it, because if you caramelize the sugars, you're basically making them complex. Definitely, and it's called a Maillard. Um, Effect. Let me see what. Let me Google Maillard. It when you caramelize sugar, if you take it too far, you guess what's known as the Maillard effect. It's non-enzymatic browning that occurs when amino acids and reducing sugars are heated together. Well, that's just for making a golden brown crust, and in cooking, it's a great thing, but in reducing, it's not. So you don't want to get it to the temperature where it starts caramelizing and turning brown and crystallizing. You've definitely made a very complex polysaccharide. Then you've taken a disaccharide and created a polysaccharide or a large oligosaccharide. In my mind, what's a good solid go-to basic recipes? Not looking for all your secrets that won't be too hot. The time I did 2 pounds sugar, 1 pound grain. Absolutely, it's going to be hot. Yeah, it's definitely. Yeah, if you can do the conversions like we were talking about earlier, so start with two and a quarter, 2.5 ish, pounds of yellow dent corn, grind it up, make it sure it's a finer crack. You don't want just to split the kernels in half. You need those kernels to be in at least 6 pieces or more, and you don't necessarily want dust either. So if you want to, you can sieve it and get all the dust out just through a really fine screen and save that dust to make you some cornbread with it. It makes fine cornbread. Yellow dent's what they used to make cornbread with. And everybody's like, oh, that's that animal grade. It's not for just animals. We're animals. We eat it too. Um, so you can use it for cornbread. And, some of these heirloom corns make excellent cornbread. So yeah, you probably as good for that as anything. It makes some really good cornbread. So sometimes if you get some fines, sieve them out and save them, put them aside and make cornbread. Anyway, but heat those up like we were talking, steep at 185 to 90 for, 90 minutes to a couple of hours, 90 minutes minimum. It definitely can take less time. You know, a lot of people say, oh, it doesn't take 90 minutes to gelatinize. It can gelatinize faster, especially if it's a finer grind. But I tell everybody 90 minutes because then you'll be sure to have it, you know. So don't cut just because I said that. Don't cut the corners. Take it for 90. Try to maintain 190, 85 more. And then add your high temp alpha amylase and keep it in the refrigerator. And after it sits, if you don't buy the big huge quarts, if you don't run a lot of liquor, because it doesn't take very much of this stuff, and it will go bad after a couple of years, even if it's in the fridge. So, and it will become less efficient after a year. So you're going to have to use more if it's a year old. Maybe double up. It's not going to hurt anything if you use a little bit more. It's not going to affect your taste. But you run a higher cost, you know, with using more amylase than you may have needed. But so, you know, use your high temp alpha at 185 after it cooks for 90 or steeps for 90 at that temperature, and then allow it to cool. If it gets to 185 or 150 and you want to add some malted barley or unmalted barley, you know, just regular two row or rye for any other adjunct grains, you can throw them in. And we've got a little chart here that can show you what temperature that you want to add a lot of these adjunct grains at. And depending on which ones that you're using, let's see here. Let me find the chart. Here we go. You'll see me use this chart a million times, and it's a great chart. It's also in the Moonshine Militia files and in the DIY Shine and Steel Building files, and it's called Grain Saccharides, Grain Saccharification Range, I think is the name of the file. Let me check that again. So you can search for it in the group. Yeah. Grain, if you just type in grain, if I'm not drinking, I can say that word fluently, but saccharification, rest temps, and gelatinization temps. But yeah, follow these temps. You'll see it's wheat. You can add it at 150. You can see the barley malt about 155. And just plain regular barley that's not malted, you'll add a little bit lower temperature, you know, up there at about 145. Rye, even a little bit about the time your barley cools to the point, you can start adding rye, oats, and you can see that a lot of these you can add at the same time, right? Your barley, your wheat, your rye, your oats, you can add those at about 140, 45, and it's going to be fine. And then as it cools, then you add your beta glucanase, glucoamylase, or maybe a combo of the two, whatever your label calls for, maybe 140. And you can see, wow, on this sheet here, it covers a lot of the range of a lot of the grains that do have these glucans. And a lot of these grains, especially when they're malted, they have an amylase naturally in them that will break them down. So beta glucanase is an endogenic enzyme that comes directly from the malted grain, and it will take care of that. If you don't have that grain malted, then you do need to use a beta glucanase or a combination of a beta glucanase glucoamylase that Clint talks about. The Sebflow and the Sebamil, I think, has maybe a little bit of both in there, or maybe it was another one he was using that had a combination. But we were looking at them, and I think that's some of the reason that there's different temps that we add them, because some of them may have that beta that you want to have entered at a little higher temperature, and some may be just pure gluco, which goes in at a lower temperature, and some will be a combination, so it'll be somewhere in between. But just follow your label and add that at the 140, 120, 100, or whatever it calls for, and then let it sit. And you should get a good conversion, you know, and it's a cheap way to make sugar. It's actually cheaper to make the sugars in this, the simple sugars in this, than actually buying a bag of sugar. And it's very smooth. So if you can do that, you're definitely gonna have a lot smoother alcohol. And so hopefully you can get that and not need that sugar anymore, and it'll definitely take a lot of that bite out. Yeah, I've not had those. Maybe it's the one where they dried out like that. Maybe it was the stringed one that they call leather britches because they dry them out like that. Or is it just a variety? I don't know. But I remember stringing those things up and letting them hang. Shucky beans. Yep. Maybe shucky beans maybe have been one of the varieties I'm trying to think. That does sound it. I believe that was the shucky beans that was the old variety that she got from her grandma. That definitely rings a bell. I'm pretty sure it was a shucky bean. She never said shack. It was shuck. Shuck. I don't know. Maybe it was just mispronounced over the years, but shucky bean. I'm gonna Google that shucky bean. Yep, shucky beans are leather breeches, are heirloom Southern Appalachia snap beans that have been strung up and dried whole for winter. That is the bean. I'm glad you mentioned that. That is exactly the bean that she had that was traditionally that was handed down from her grandparents was the shucky bean. That sure is. I'm glad we continued that conversation because I could not remember what it was until she said shack. I'm like, shuck, that's it, shucky beans. But yeah, shucky beans and leather breeches, same thing. And yes, that's the ones that she strung up and hung. That's the ones. I'm glad we got that settled. But yeah, that we don't have those. I wish she kept a whole bag full of them too, and every year she'd keep some out. And I thought maybe she was stringing them up to dry them. I didn't know she's rehydrating them and cooking them. But yeah, they were really good. Yeah, and inverting sugar is also great too, because when you make brandies, it's going to be really tough just because it's very expensive in fruit, and it's going to be tough to get a good gravity without a little bit of sugar addition. So anytime you do that, having that inverted sugar or just using, some dextrose definitely helps a lot. Take that bite out. Shack beans. I bet you they're shucky beans. I bet you they're all the same bean because it sounds like instead of just hanging them, they just put them in a pillow sack. I'd say it's probably the same damn bean. No, 135 is fine. Just any temperature to dissolve it. You want to dissolve it. You don't want to add temperature or add sugar when it's like room temperature. It's all going to go to the bottom. It's not going to dissolve well, and that's not good. Very stressful for the yeast, and it doesn't dissolve well, and you have to stir it to dissolve it, and it's slow. You definitely want to dissolve it when it's a little warmer for sure. Not wrong at all. No, it takes 236 degrees with the proper amount of acid. So you can use tartaric acid, you can use lemon juice or citric acid. Three of the most common, or lemon juice. Did I say lemon juice? You can use those three for your acid. And what the acid does, it helps break that glycosidic bond in sucrose. In table sugar, you've got a molecule of fructose and a molecule of glucose combined, and that makes sucrose in a table sugar. And to break that glycosidic bond, you need 236 degrees, and you need some acid to as an oxidant and as a accelerant, and it helps break that bond. That's why we also talk about making sure you have slightly acidic water when you do your conversions. You want to proof. You want to reduce the pH in those down to about 5.3. You can take it down to like 4.7 and then add a little pickling lime in it to help create a buffered solution. And that will help prevent crashing as well. But having an acidic water when you do that conversion will help, get those complex sugars converted down for you. But yeah, definitely inverted sugar definitely helps. It's sweeter than actual sugar, and it makes a monosaccharide. But you heat it up to 236 degrees, and make sure you're stirring. And also, it's good to have it like one of those little silicone brushes. I use a lot for basting. And anytime that sugar splashes up on the walls of whatever you're using, a double boiler to make this inverted sugar, use those, dip them in a little bit of water and push that down off the side. You don't want, because that'll start crystallization. And once it starts crystallizing on the walls of that heating vessel, whatever you're using, it's like it infects the whole thing. Every bit of it will start to crystallize on you, and you won't have a syrup anymore. It'll crystallize like honey does sometimes. So you want to, with a silicone brush, and a little bit of water on it, keep pushing that down, and don't let it accumulate up on the walls of the pot that you're stirring and cooking, and be conscious of how you stir it. And it's kind of a little complex, but it's sweeter than regular sugar, and it's very good, especially in cooking and pastry making and making frostings and things like that. Definitely really good. But 236, and definitely don't want it browning. Right. Yeah, they have the combination and everything that you need, but it doesn't hurt, especially if you're not using that 20%, or you're using 2-row instead of 6-row, and you're not going to have enough diastatic alpha and beta combo to convert everything, to use a little high temp early on and use a little gluco at the end. Definitely not going to hurt. What's going on, Hellbilly? Good to see you, brother. Absolutely. Absolutely. Me and Mikey Frayne sat and figured it out one day, and the cost of how much more it's considerably more expensive to make sugar with buying it by the bag at 70 cents a pound. That's cheap sugar. That's beet sugar a lot of time. You can get it a lot cheaper with corn. A lot. Yep. And it was shucky beans. They're called shucky beans or leather breeches. Yep. Oh, you're fine. So I'm glad you said that, because I immediately, and they do call them shack beans as well. So you didn't mispronounce it or misspell it. It's just leather breeches, shucky beans, shack beans, and actually shack beans may have been the right term. She just called it shucky because it could have been something that they heard wrong and just always called, or grandmother called it shacky beans, and actually she said shucky. I mean, but I did the it's the same thing. Shack beans, shuck beans, and they're all the same thing. Leather breeches. So I'm glad we figured that out, because that meant a lot to her. She really loved those shucky beans, and I did too. I had no idea that she was drying them out and rehydrating them and cook them. I didn't spend a lot of time in the kitchen. I should have spent more time. Yeah, I wish I had some of those seeds still. Yeah, they good for the heart. I'm not sure. I have no idea, but I do know a lot of bartenders will use it, and a lot of times they call it simple syrup. But a lot of times, simple syrup hasn't been inverted. It's just basically dissolved sugar in water. So you have to be careful. If it's simple syrup, can be just dissolved sugar. It's thick, so they use a lot of sugar for to water ratio. But a lot of times it hadn't been cooked to 236 and inverted with acid and all that good jazz. Baker sugar, though, let me read about that. Helps if you spell it. I can't spell either, Timmy. Can't type. No, I don't think it is. Baker's invert sugar, often called tremoline, is a concentrated liquid syrup made. Well, maybe it is. It does say Baker's invert sugar. Yeah, it is. It does use acid. Okay, yeah. It's created by splitting standard sucrose using a acid and heat. Liquid sugar is prized for baking and retaining moisture, preventing crystallization and extending shelf life. So, yeah, again, they're preventing the crystallization. So when you're making it, you got to take that little silicone brush and you got to be vigilant. Because it'll be just like honey. And I mean, it'll happen. It's just like it spreads. You can't stop it. Once you get the crystal started, it's like it's done. It'll just all turn to crystal on you. And it doesn't take 5 or 10 minutes to do. It's not like honey taking a week or a month and sitting on the shelf. It happens quickly. And you can't store it real well. It won't store as a syrup. So, yeah, it's I don't know if I guess you can buy it that way. Say maybe a tremoline, TRIMOLINE, is a concentrated inverted sugar paste syrup, popular in pastries. Actually, a pastry chef is where I got my recipe for doing it from, and taught how to do it by a pastry chef, and it definitely good for confection. A confectioner. No, you're not. You're not. It is invert. Yeah, it spreads like wildfire, man. Once it gets started, it's done. And I guess you could maybe add some water, stir it, and heat it back up, and get rid of those crystals. I don't know, but um, I do know that he was imperative using that silicone brush and dip it in water, and make sure, because you're basically cooking all the water off when you're making it. So you're just basically creating a syrup that's almost pure sugar of monosaccharides, and a lot of the water gets boiled and cooked off. And there's not a lot of water. I do have a recipe for that somewhere. I'll share it with y'all sometime. If you can remind me, I'll get it out and share it. I think it's written on the jacket of my file folder, in fact, because I've lost some files. I've lost some of my recipes that were on small sheets of paper out of that file folder. I should have had on a full sheet. So anybody got plans for this weekend? What's everybody doing this weekend? You used to hang a string off a pencil over a pot of sugar water and make rock candy when we were kids. I guess they're making a lot of rock candy with shine. So they're taking shine, I guess, and cooking it down, and getting, I guess, all the alcohol cooked off, and adding sugar, and just retaining some of the character of the shine or brandy or whatever, and making candy with it. I think that's one of the things they're doing with a lot of different people's moonshine. I'm trying to think of that gal's company name. They do quite a bit of different people's shine on it. I've never put a lot of mine out there to do it. My grappa would have been good, but it was just too expensive to make. Too time too much time and too much money to make candy with. Be awful expensive candy. So you staying at home and being safe. That's a smart thing to do. Like what he said on Outlaw Josie Wells about rock candy. It's not for eating, it's for licking through. I cook up some fajitas. That's one of my favorites, man. We'll probably be eating some fajitas soon. There's some ribeyes going on sale. I don't know. I may end up buying some of them cheap $10.99 ones. They're thin, but that's a pretty good price. I just wish they'd cut them for that. But I think Meyer has them for $12.99, so I may pay a couple dollars more to get some thick ones a pound. But every time we eat steak, I get big thick ones, and I can eat most of it. Sometimes I don't eat it all, and eat less than half of it. So we always have a lot of meat left over, and the next day we'll always mix that with some green peppers and onions and spice it up and make fajitas. I love them. I think I like them about as well as I do the steak. They're awful good. Staying with the family, enjoying some smoked Boston butts, shining fireworks, man. That sounds like a good plan. Staying home off the road. Yeah, it's almost as bad as New Year's Day, man, for drunk drivers. So if you get out, definitely be careful and don't drink and drive, and be careful. Be a defensive driver and be on the lookout, because there's a lot of people drinking and driving tomorrow or Saturday night. No, got to make that money. It'll be a busy day, man, for sure, for sure. And you get to look forward to driving all the drunk people home. That's going to be fun. Might put some barf bags in the back seat in case they, explain to them when they get in the car. Okay, if you get sick, place the bag over your face like this. You can be the stewardess. Make sure you get some barf bags. Also, if you get a dash cam, that'd be nice, man, because it makes it a lot safer and can protect you liability-wise as well. Definitely protect you. Got my little magnifier out. Can't read very well without it. Got reading glasses. My contacts are so damn dirty I can't hardly read. What am I doing for the 4th? I don't know. I might go up to old Philbilly's and hang out for a little while and party with my brothers. Probably be what I do. Go to Cleveland. Or Columbus. Not Cleveland. Columbus. Yeah, he's not far. He's about an hour and 15 minutes. Might be an hour and a half if we drive. If we drive during the traffic hours. Dayton. Why am I thinking Columbus? It's Dayton. Jeez, I was like, it's not Columbus. No. Yeah, definitely not. And not Cleveland. It is Dayton. But yeah, he's about an hour and 15, hour and a half away. Not bad. Yeah, we'll have a good time. Hillbilly Jam is in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. It's right on the Tennessee, North Carolina line, pretty close. Just here's Waynesville. Just a little bit west and south of Waynesville. In fact, Waynesville is a pretty good place to get rooms and stuff. But it's real close to the border, close to um, Dollywood and all that good stuff. Fairly close, really. Pigeon Forge, all that. Let me find it on the map here. Maggie Valley, North Kakalaki. Yeah. So yeah, it's close to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, but it's just across the border there, southeast of Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg. And it's right on Highway 19. And it's where they shoot moonshiners a lot. Almost due west of Asheville, North Carolina, which is fairly close to Old Fort where we went and took care of a lot of the flood victims. Hooked them up with some tents and camp stoves. Went back Christmas night. Got to play Santa and give out toys to the kids of the affected people during the flood. That was very rewarding. Yeah, it's good people in that area. But yeah, that's close to where they make the show there, the Moonshiner show. A lot of it gets shot there. A lot of the people live either there or around there. Yeah, I'm glad you asked, man. We've been biting our nails, man. Worried to death it's going to flood again, but so far so good. Knocking on wood. But we did get a lot of flooding here a couple of weeks ago. Got a lot of tornadoes. 2 different days, tornadoes came through, and maybe a week later, yeah, it's flooding. And earthquake happened in Indiana, close to Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky border there. So we're getting tornadoes, flooding, and earthquakes, man. It's almost like reading End of Times, Revelation. It's crazy. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. It's a music festival first and foremost, but because it's in the town where they shoot the Moonshiner show and a lot of moonshiners show up, we kind of taken it over. I don't know if they were happy about it the first year, but they've realized that we're not wild, crazy hillbillies that are there fighting and getting crazy drunk and raising a lot of cane. That's and now they welcome us and they love it. But at first, I think they were a little apprehensive about having a bunch of moonshiners there, but now I think they're realizing that we're not quite as wild as our reputation uh, precedes us. But it's a great time. It's a lot of fun, and but there's a lot of good festivals. We have Beattyville here in Kentucky. We got Far in the Bottle in Ohio, and that one. And I go to one down in Arkansas, which is a good one. There's some good ones going on now in Missouri, a couple in Arkansas. Louisiana is now adding some. They're marketing them, talking about trying to get one going down in Florida. But there's a lot of fun, a lot of music and moonshine, good combo, especially when it's good music. But this year, yeah, I'll did Beattyville. I would like to go to Popcorn Sutton Festival. That's in Tennessee, and close. It's in Eastern Tennessee, fairly close to Maggie and all that, but it's on the Tennessee side, and it's a good festival as well. I'd like to hit them all, but it's just tough, especially the one in Arkansas. It's about a 12-hour drive. It's tough. I can't do it alone. So if I can't drive with Damon or Fergie, it's going to be hard for me to just drive down there and go. But I really enjoy that down there. Great people. Remind me a lot of the people at home, back home in Eastern Kentucky. Old hillbillies, just a different set of hills. The Ozarks. Down in Wayne's country. I know, man. It's bad. Sumac. Now, I know there's a poison sumac, so if you do, make sure you get the good one. Yeah, I didn't get to make it for popcorn. I definitely want to go, but yeah, that's what I was thinking, Clint. So make sure you get the right sumac, and I generally don't encourage that unless somebody's an authority on knowing varieties and stuff. Kind of like picking your own uh, berries, for your gin. Making sure you're getting the right berries is very. I'm gonna check out this sumac. But anyway, there's certain types of juniper berries that are poisonous, and then there's some that you can use in your gins and stuff. All sumacs belong to the same family, but harmless sumac is a dry soil shrub with red berries, while poison sumac is a wetland plant with white berries. So if you're going to do that, make sure you know what you're getting. Harmless varieties are used in landscaping and spice, whereas poison sumac contains erythritol, the same potent oil found in poison ivy. Right. Yeah, if you do the sumac, make sure that you're conscious of what you're using. But no, I've never tried it. Not even sure what the flavor profile would be. I'm reading more about the harmless staghorn sumac, smooth sumac. Trying to see the red berries are harmless. Can be steeped in cold water to make sumac aid, a tart lemonade like drink. Dried ground sumac berries of a specific species are also widely used in savory spice in Middle Eastern cooking. Still not telling me what does it taste like. I've not done these, so I would say that you could probably use it for an infusion to add that, or use it like you would in a gin. Use it as a botanical, dry it out, and use it as a botanical, and making like a gin. Be interesting. Yeah, most of the sumac I've always heard of has been poison sumac because that's it's like poison ivy, and if you touch it, you're going to be itchy to death if you're allergic to it or have reactions to it. That's interesting. I didn't know that much about the sumacs. Absolutely, kudzu for sure. Yeah, anything that's got starches. Yep. Yeah, kudzu. That's if you want to get rid of kudzu and eliminate kudzu, just tell a bunch of moonshiners it'll make liquor. You'll never see another kudzu plant in the mountains. But yeah, they've cut back on the kudzu a lot. They've eliminated a lot of it, fortunately. But yeah, if you wanna get rid of the kudzu, just tell all the moonshiners around there that it makes good moonshine, and man, it'll be gone. They will get it all. Oh yeah, definitely. Anything with starch in it like that, but you still need to use your amylase. So like potatoes or you know any kind of a lot of the roots that are starchy roots, as long as they're not toxic, yeah, you could you could definitely add the amylase and convert those starches just the same. Just that's like we do with potatoes, or there's even a lot of people don't realize it, but a lot of fruits contain some starches, and in making brandies, I know I don't know of many people that do this, but if you're using certain types of fruit that are high in starch, you can actually use some amylase along with them and convert those starches. Of course, um, you're not gonna get as much, but what little starch that are in there, you can convert. Bananas, they've got some starch. Let's see, fruits with starch. Now, one of our lists here that I share a lot, put it up here. It adds it. It's well, why is it not opening? Oh, it's just being slow. Now, if you can see to the right here, it'll say amylase needed. That's not pectic enzyme. That's actually amylase that you can add to a lot, even apples and a lot of different fruits. Some of it more than others, some not needed at all. But there is actually starches in a lot of fruits. Yep. And let's see. So plantains is the starchiest fruit available. So these plantains, which is a lot like a banana. Trying to think of pawpaw. There's going to be a lot of them. Bananas, unripe or green bananas, are rich in resistant starches. As they ripen, that starch converts into natural sugars. So that's why you don't want to use uh, green bananas. Breadfruit is another that is like a potato, and it has a lot of starches. So there are quite a few others, and some more so than others. But you have to have enzymes because they are resistant. Jackfruit is another one. So breadfruit, jackfruit. Trying to see if I can get a good chart here. But yeah, a lot of roots, tubers, and seeds will have them too. But these common foods that are high in starch: potatoes, rice, bread, pastas, oats, corn, beans, and lentils. Bean shine. Somebody was talking about that the other day. If ever heard anybody making bean shine, and I have not. Lentil shine, quinoa, plantains, so all those, or even tapioca, is another high starch. Dates are good to make liquor out of. I always took liquor on the dates, but I never tried to make it out of the dates. Works pretty well on a date. Daikon radishes. Deer radish. What about horseradish? Deer radishes. Maybe them horseradishes. Yeah, definitely. You're doing good, brother. How's it going, Steve? Good to see you, man. Yeah. Rutabaga, turnip. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of starchy tubers and vegetables that can be, used. Just use that and amylase. There's a lot of beets, you know, beet shine. So we know they make a lot of beet sugar. You know, it's got that. It's got it in it. Make beet shine. We do that, I guess, often enough when we use that beet sugar, don't we? I bet that would be pretty hot. But that'd be interesting. Make some beet shine. Bet it'd work. Yeah, it is about shot time. It's about closing time too. Make some of this multigrain. Got a little secret thing coming up. It's going to be, I'm not sure, within a little bit, but I'm not gonna I shouldn't have started this. I can't, but we got something special coming up. Let's just say that. And I'll give a hint. It was something I talked about the other night, but I couldn't remember the name of. So if you can remember it, you might know. But if you tuned in, you'll know. Maybe if you can remember. But it's something I couldn't remember the name of, and it's something new. That's all I'm going to say. But we're going to have a little bit of show about it and talk about it. Maybe the next best thing. Yeah. Yeah, most of them made from beets. It's a lot easier to grow them than the cane. More efficient, I guess. But yeah, I'm not gonna let the cat out of the bag. I will announce it when it's happening, and it'll be a special. And I'll just have to leave it at that. But I do need to get up with Alan. Alan, if you're listening, give me a shout, or I will give you a shout. I know it's a tough time for you, or it may be the best time to do it. I don't know. I know you're going through some transitions and got some good things going on, and I saw that you're working with Eric Wolf up there and making some distillates up there with them. That's awesome. Kimchi. A lot of people like that kimchi. A friend of mine, Filipino, loves that shit. She talks about that all the time. Jeffrey Williams, trying to learn how to make some shine. Well, you came to the right place, brother. We are here every Tuesday and Saturday between 8 and whenever. We start at 8 Eastern, and we're going to be here a little bit longer. You know, we got time to talk about it. But this Saturday, we're not going to be here. But what type of shine you want to make? Just a regular corn liquor? We can definitely kind of go over it real quickly, how to do it. And you can also, you know, watch this on YouTube, on Philbilly's channel, or on the Moonshine Militia channel. You can watch this all over again. So we talked about it earlier. We've talked about it a couple times through this, but we will definitely go through it again with you real quickly and easily. Very simple to do, but there are some things that you're going to need to purchase. First thing is, of course, you're going to need to get some corn. Yellow Dent #2 corn from Tractor Supply or from a farmer around you. Good and cheap. It's perfect corn for doing what we're talking about. Definitely want to get that. You might want to write this down. Get some high temperature alpha amylase. It's a liquid. You can get that from Philbilly, North Georgia. You can get it off Amazon. You can get it through Firm Solutions out of Danville, Kentucky. You can get it from Prohibition Moonshine. But definitely want to get some good, fresh, high temp alpha amylase. And that's alpha, ALPHA, AMYLASE. And it's a high temp liquid. And you'll need that. And you'll also need some liquid glucoamylase, right? So having that, you'll go buy some corn at Tractor Supply, 50-pound bag, right? So you'll need to grind it up unless you buy the cracked corn, which you'll probably still need to grind up a little bit if it's cracked heavily or lightly. And you'll want to grind the corn up into a corn meal. By using regular cornmeal is okay. It's not as fresh. It's sometimes a little bit too fine. It's a little harder to work with, especially for beginners. Cracked corn's a good start. But if you buy it cracked and it's old, it kind of gets like coffee, that's already been ground, and you buy it ground and it's a month 5 old, and it just doesn't have that fresh taste. Best to get the fresh kernels if you have a way to grind it. But if not, it's okay just to use the cracked corn. Do not get corn that has any supplements in it. You want just pure cracked corn. No enriched with anything, no apple flavor for deer, none of that other stuff. Pure cracked corn, only cracked corn. No well they got the little some of it'll contain a small ball of minerals. What do they call those? I can't remember what the term for them is, but it's got a supplement in it that comes in like a small grain, and it's a pelleted. It's pellet, and you definitely don't want the pelleted type or any pellets in it, because that's generally for livestock, right? It's a nutrient for your livestock. You want just cracked corn, or yellow dent number 2 corn, which is just the corn kernels, no additives, nothing else. Or if you got a farmer around you that grows field corn, you can get some yellow dent from them. They'll probably get it to you a lot cheaper. But anyway, you crack it up, grind it up, and you want to use a cooler or heat it. You want to heat your corn to 185 degrees, or steep it. It's best to steep it. So you'll start at about 2 pounds of corn per gallon of water. So if you want to do the whole, I'd say cut the bag in half, do half of it, 25 pounds, and you'll start with about 13, 15 gallons of water. Let's do the math here. 25. 12.5 gallons of water. So 12 and a half, 25, that'll be 2 gallons or 2 pounds of grain per gallon of water, right? So we'll start with 12 and a half gallons of water boiling, and we'll get 25 pounds of grain ground. And you're going to get that water roll and boil. Pour it in a cooler and save about maybe 3 gallons to the side, and then immediately start stirring in that cracked corn, right, in that cooler. You want something that's going to be something able to maintain that temperature, insulated. So you can use a barrel that's wrapped up or anything that's insulated. Anything you can use to hold the heat is better, because you've got to gelatinize this corn. You're getting the starches out of this corn. So we're going to start with maybe 9.5 gallons. We're going to keep 3 separate. So we've got 12 and a half gallons of water, 9 of which we're going to add. So we're going to keep 3.5 on the side boiling. And then we're going to stir all this 25 pounds of cracked ground corn into that water and stir it up real good. And then we're going to let it sit. And then we're going to put a thermometer in there, and we're going to check its temperature. And when it gets down to 185, we're going to add a little bit more of this boiling water from the extra 3 gallons to the side, and we're going to steep that, right? So we're going to maintain 185 plus degrees Fahrenheit and gelatinize that corn for 90 minutes. So after the 90 minutes is up, every 30 minutes you'll be adding a gallon, right? Or every 15 minutes add a half a gallon to maintain that temperature, and over 90 minutes you'll use the 3 gallons, right? Okay, so at that point in time, when it cools down to 185 degrees, you'll add that high temperature alpha amylase, and you'll stir it in with a drill with a mud mixer on it. The drywall mixer attachment or any paint mixer works, but the drywall mud mixer works really well. I don't know if I have a picture of that. If I do, I'll show you a picture of it. I think I might, because I think I've shown people. Oh, yes, I do. So it'll look like that. You've seen them before. That's used to stir up drywall mud and other thin sets and things of that nature. Put that on your drill, stir it up. It'll save you from having to paddle and wear your arms out, right? Because you're going to do a lot of stirring. What's going on, Gip? So I've heard a lot of people soaking it. I don't, but yeah, it's okay to soak. All right, you got one of those? Okay, good. So you'll add that in, stir it in, and use that amylase after it sits for 90 minutes, 185 plus. It should gelatinize. It'll get real thick, like a corn pudding, cream corn. It'll get real thick on you, and it'll gel up. You'll notice it gelling up. So after it does that, you'll add that high temp alpha amylase, and you'll be amazed how you'll be like, there's no way that little bit of liquid is going to do anything. You'll want to add more than you need, because it's like, there's no way this little teaspoon or whatever is going to use whatever it calls for. Dump it in there, start stirring it in with that mud mixer, and you will be shocked at how thin and watery that thick gel becomes. So you've taken the starch out of the grain, and now you're hydrolyzing it. You're turning it back into a liquefaction, right? You're liquefying it and hydrolyzing it. So now it's becoming a liquid again. So you'll allow that to cool. You'll stir it up good, and it'll get liquidy. Then you'll just let it sit and let it cool. And when it gets to about 140, 120, or 100 degrees, whatever temperature your glucoamylase tells you to add it at, that's what temperature you'll stir that in at, okay? Once you get done doing that, you let it sit overnight. The next morning should be fairly close to room temperature, and then you can add your yeast of choice. I recommend a daddy yeast for beginners. You can use a bread yeast if you want to. It's something cheap and easy. I recommend getting a distiller's yeast. It's going to handle a little higher tolerance alcohol, but there's nothing wrong with bread yeast. A lot of people prefer a daty because the bread yeast has a bready flavor. Some prefer it, some don't. I used it forever. It's okay. But it's whatever. And that's it. You just add your yeast in there, stir it in real good, put a blanket or a towel or something over your barrel to keep, the bugs out, and keep it, depending on the yeast that you use. If you use a bread yeast, 80 degrees, you keep it outside during these temperatures, it'll be fine. The daily yeast will be fine at those temperatures as well. And just let it start working off. You don't need nutrients. You don't need your oyster shells like we talk about. It should work off within 3 to 5 days at these temperatures, and it works great. Hey, Lisa. So and let it work off, and in just a few days, it'll smell kind of like a lot like a beer. You've made basically a corn based beer. And you let it settle. You'll see the cap, on the day one, so big, heavy cap on the top. Gently press that down into the water a few times a day for the first day or two, and keep that kind of moist. And it'll help get some of the flavors from that in there. It'll help keep it moist and hold the carbon dioxide in there. And it'll also help keep mold from developing, because you'll get that alcohol on there and the acidic water that'll help it keep it. Also, I didn't mention, but the water that you boil, you want to add some lemon juice to it or some citric acid. And if you don't have pH paper, it's hard to dose, but if you've got some kind of pH testing, you can, it would help. It's not essential. You don't have to do it. Been done for centuries without it, but it does help a little bit. But that's getting a little bit more complex. We'll worry about that later. But basically, that's it. And once that cap starts settling down and you see it's clear on the top and it's all dropped, then it's ready to go. And you can taste it. If it still tastes sweet, it might take a little bit more time, but generally it's going to be a little bitter. And what's going on, Curtis? And it'll be ready to go. It'll be like a beer, a little bit sour beer. Just siphon that off. Try to keep your grain bed down and siphon off just your clears. If you want to put that into after you siphon the clears off, you'll have a yeast bed and some grain bed in the bottom. If you want to put that into a brewer's bag and press it in an apple press, or just let it hang from the bag over a bucket overnight, let it drip, you can do that and then let that settle out and add that, or you can use that to start the next one and do a sour mash. Either way works, and distill it. It's that simple, and make good corn liquor that way. Very cheap, inexpensive, and cut your teeth doing it that way, and you'll definitely, save yourself a lot of time and trouble of doing a sugar shine. A lot of people do a sugar shine first, but getting a decent little steel, beginner steel or something like that is a must. You can get some pretty cheap little China steels these days that do a pretty good job. They're stainless, they're easy to clean. Might need to use a little copper mesh in it. This is a Vever football steel, 18 and a half gallons, 230 some dollars, and you can use it just like it is right there. Or you can get you a little column to put on there, and or a beer keg works just as well, and many think better. So you can get you a little beer keg and run a little column off it like this. If I can find the picture, I can put it up. Maybe I'm not in the right spot for that picture. I'm not. It is, yeah, here. Here we go. Get you a little column like that from anywhere from 100 to, I've seen it cheap. It was 90 on Amazon Prime Day, but I've seen them generally about 120, 130 bucks. But sometimes you can get them 80, 90 bucks. And you can set that right on the keg, or you can set that right on that Vever steel and take the football off to get a little higher proof. But yeah, or you can buy copper steel, or you can make your own, follow some patterns. And if you're good at cutting and soldering, you can make your own little copper steel just fine. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be watertight and pressure, resistant to moderate low pressures, really 3 to 5. So, but yeah, it's easy to do, Jeffrey. But it can get much more complex, and there's a lot of science that I didn't explain, but you don't have to take it that far. You don't have to learn the science. You can follow a simple recipe. You can stir up and make brownies or cook something, cook a meal following a recipe. You can follow the recipe I just gave you and make good corn liquor. It's that simple. I would use either a stainless steel or a copper. Yeah, those are the only two metals that you'll want to use. Nothing else. Stainless or copper. You don't want aluminum. That runs into issues about aluminum ions, and you don't want anything acidic in that. It's not good. And galvanized or any steel or anything like that, you definitely don't want those. But copper, it's a little bit expensive right now, sheets of copper. But if you're good at soldering, you can take it, get a pattern and cut it out and make your own steel, hammer it out and solder it up good. You can solder the shit out of it and make it leak proof. And it might not be pretty, but as long as it doesn't leak, it's all that matters. Or you can buy, a keg on Marketplace, get an old beer keg and take the spear out, clean it out, and get a little column just like I showed you here, and put that right on top of that keg and put it on a turkey fryer, and you got a steel. And that's you can do that for less than $200. But both of those steels you can get into for a couple $100 or, around that, and have a pretty decent little setup for sure. But it's that simple. If you want to, just watch the show over. We've got, I don't know, maybe hundreds of shows by now. We've been doing it for years, but, got a lot of shows, and you can just go back, watch some of the old shows and watch some of the old shows and pick up on, because you'll have the same questions that everybody asks on the show. And this show's all Q&A. We'll get bored and talk about every topic from string beans, the weather, to what we're going to do on the weekends, and drinking and plants and food and everything else. But anytime you have questions, that's what we're here for. We're here on Tuesdays, Saturdays. So start doing some research, get online, and you'll see in the blue below us here. Join us on Facebook, DIY Shine and Steel Building. That's me and Eric Ayers' page. We created it together. or the Moonshine Militia. I'm an admin in there as well. That's Philbilly's page. And or you're watching probably on Philbilly Moonshine on YouTube. But if you're on Facebook, join DIY Shine and Steel Building and ask your questions there, and we can help you out. We got some files there that'll have some recipes. We got a Stampede Steel book that has a whole bunch of recipes in there, and we're going to add recipes. And as soon as I can get around to it, eventually I add little things from time to time. I think I did some tequila, added a tequila recipe tonight, so I did good. But yeah, join us on DIY Shine and Steel Building. Ask your questions there, or jump in here on Tuesday nights or Saturday nights. Not this Saturday, Independence Day. We're not going to be here. We're going to be partying with buddies and having a good time with family and friends. But every Tuesday and Saturday at 8 Eastern time, come in with any questions that you got, and I can break it down as scientific as you want to get, and simple as you want to get. It's like I could told you in 5 minutes all you need to do, all you need to buy, all you need to have, and all you need to cook just to make a good corn liquor. And if you can follow those simple instructions, we can have you making good liquor, brother. But it's a great hobby. Once you get into it, you'll definitely get the bug, and then you want to start thinking about maybe making some gin or tequila or some other drinks that you like to make, or maybe aging, and finding some small barrels to put your corn liquor into, or starting to add grains, right? So adding a little bit of rye, make a little corn rye, or a little wheated whiskey to make it a little sweeter. So, or using some malted grains to give you some malt flavors. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up tonight. We're at a little after 11. Usually we run 8 to 10, 8 to 11. If we get a lot of questions, we'll keep her going. But definitely, start doing some research on it. Join us at DIY Shine and Steel Building. Ask some questions this week, and we can kind of steer you in the right place and kind of keep you from making a lot of the same mistakes people make, trying to do everything on their own and micromanaging. And we'll keep you from running into some roadblocks, and we'll try to make sure that your first or second distillation is a success. And the more successful you are, the more likely you are to continue the hobby. A lot of people tend to try to do it all on their own. They make the same mistakes we all make when we try to do it on our own, and they get frustrated and they just like, fuck it, this isn't for me. They sell their steel and they go get into something else. But definitely ask questions. There's no dumb questions. Everybody asks the same ones. So, you're not going to be any different. You're going to ask the same questions everybody does. So, but do watch some of our old shows, and a lot of those questions will get answered. I wish I'd have named some of the shows. There were certain dates that we got really scientific. So some of those will maybe go above some people's head, but some people have inquiring minds and they have to know exactly how, why, and everything. And we can do both. We can give you the simple explanation, and we can get scientific with it and explain the science of it. But you found a good place. You definitely found one of the better places to come with your questions. That's for sure. But do join us on DIY Shine and Steel Building on Facebook, and watch some of the old videos there on Philbilly's on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. That way, when we do go live, you'll get a notification on YouTube that we're live. And there's some other shows that we have on there as well. Some are educational, some are not so educational, some are just a lot of fun. But we have a good mix of shows on there as well. But check out some of the old ones, and you'll get a lot of your questions answered on some of those. And if not, join us next Tuesday, the 7th, and bring all your questions, write them down, and we'll go over it step for step with you, brother. That's what we're here for. And we enjoy doing it. We don't make any money doing this. It's all volunteer. I just enjoy passing on the art, and Clint does as well. And some of the other guys in here are also. We got some beer makers in here and a lot of knowledgeable people that can chime in and help as well. All right. But everybody have a great, Chris. Everybody have a great week and a fantastic Independence Day weekend. Be careful if you're out on the road. Don't be drinking and driving, and definitely watch out for others that are. Be a defensive driver. Want to see y'all back here on the 7th. Have a great weekend. We will see you all Tuesday at 8 Eastern. Until then, have a great weekend. Have a great week. And we'll see you later. Shine on. Peace out. Happy Independence Day, everybody. Shine on.